Thank you. All right. Good evening and welcome to the November 18th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. The chair recognizes the attendance of our staff members, Jen, Kevin, Alyssa, our administrative support member, Amy, and our recording secretary, Susan. We have Steve and Mark are absent at this point. So for the record, the appointed alternates will be Pat and Peter. To the commissioners for commenting, I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time. Let's try not to speak over each other. And I'll remind you, all votes have to be done by roll call. When I call your name, please state your name and your vote. And it may be redundant, but even if you were the one that made the motion or the second, I'm still going to ask for your vote. To our public participants, there will be an opportunity for public comment for each hearing. If you'd like to comment on a particular hearing, you may submit any comments or questions via the chat function once that hearing has been opened. At the appropriate time, I will call for public comments and any submissions will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are posted on the agenda. All right, first up are minutes, November 4th, 2020. Anyone?
Mr. Chair, I read the minutes and they appeared to be in order, so I'll move their adoption.
Thank you.
Second, O'Brien.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as written. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Thank you. It is unanimous. Next up, request for a continuance under a notice of intent. Town of Falmouth, Department of Public Works, 0 Minot Road, parcel 45-20-002-000, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct beach nourishment and to construct 2 rubble mound groins. Jen and or Kevin.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until December 16th.
So move.
Carlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until 12/16. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Mark, I'm sorry. Maury.
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, Mark Gurney has entered the meeting.
Okay. Please. All right, request for a continuance under an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. Sarah Toronto Flores, Nutter, McClellan and Fish LLP, 24 Willis Lane, Falmouth, Mass. Request for confirmation of the following resource area boundaries and buffer zones: coastal beach, coastal dune, salt marsh, and bordering vegetated wetland. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until December 2nd.
Carlo Hawks, so moved.
The staff is going to go out with their wetland scientist to review some wetland boundaries on Monday.
Okay. Maury made a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until 12/2. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Mark. Is Mark with us?
Mark's got his thumb up. He says aye, and he's gonna be calling in momentarily.
Okay, Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Walsh, aye.
thank you. It is unanimous. Next up is a request for continuance under an enforcement order. Claudia Senadis, 51 Pondview Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted removal of vegetation within conservation jurisdiction. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff would like to, with the property owners, agreement, we're gonna continue this until December 2nd. We want to meet with their representative, who is unable to meet with us on Monday. So we're hoping to meet with them sometime next week or early the following week.
Bird, so move.
O'Brien, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to continue this enforcement hearing until 12/2. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Mark has a big thumbs up. He says aye.
Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. The hearing is continued until December 2nd. Next up are requests for determination of applicability. First up, Fred.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. One quick thing. Thomas, can you give Mark a call and help him with the, what number to call into, please? Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman.
And Jamie, may I ask Jen something? Jen, I don't have the attendance sheets for the enforcement hearings.
It's okay. I'll fill those out.
All right.
May I have permission to proceed?
Vice Chair,
Aye.
grant permission.
First up, Fred and Sue Sievert, 211 Coonamessett Circle, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to vista prune according to FWR 10.18 10B. Mr. Newton,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Harlow Hawks, so moved.
Bird, second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark? Thank you. Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Unanimous, thank you. Next up, Alana Bednarz, 404 Maravista Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to remove a deck and construct a new deck. Kevin,
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird,
Harlow
so
Hawks, so moved.
I'll second it.
okay. We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark? Okay, that works for me. Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous, thank you. Next up, Norman Family Woods Hole LLC, 55 Church Street, Woods Hole, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to remove a tree, to rebuild treads, to remove and replace a wooden handrail, and to rebuild a portion of an existing retaining wall. Mr. Newton,
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Harlow Hawks, second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark? Okay, Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you.
1 second, Mr. Chairman. Mark Thomas is going to be calling you. Proceed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anthony Penticus, 5 Canopisset Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to repair an existing septic system with no increase in design flow. Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Mark,
Aye.
More.
I was helping Mark, sorry.
Maury.
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Thank you. Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, K.S. Khan, 438 Seacoast Shores Boulevard, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to replace a portion of the foundation and to remove and reconstruct an existing. Mr. Newton.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Mark, Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, Paul R. Dupee, 91 Adamancet Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install a 2,500 gallon white tank. Mr. Newton.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawks, second.
Hey, Kevin, if you would, can you explain the necessity of a tight tank in that location?
Sure, yeah, it's if you were out there, you'd know why, but it's like it's right on the water. There's no area for leaching field. I mean, if there was one, it would be going right into the pond. It's uphill gradient behind it, so it makes sense in this instance.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Mark? Oh, I can't see Mark now.
He's off screen. I think he's working with Thomas, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'm not gonna take his vote this time then. Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
All right, still passes. We accept staff's recommendation. Thank you. Next up, Robert Bonazzoli, 18 Rivers Edge Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a house and install a Title V subsurface sewage disposal system. Mr. Newton.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Mark in the picture.
Rooney, aye.
Thank you, Mark. Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, Stephen Augusta, 2 Bournes Cove Lane, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install a pool with a patio and landscape wall. Mr. Newton.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawk second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bird, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's eye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up are requests for a hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up, Waterside LC, 176 Waterside Drive, North Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct, maintain a spa rent station. To modify the existing decks, patio, and walkways. To conduct invasive species management, to plant native buffer plantings, and for all associated landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've just promoted Tim Santos up to present the project. I think I did. I did.
Tim, if you're there, you're up.
Yes, I am now in. Thank you very much.
Tim, is there anybody else on your project team I should be promoting up?
Yes, can you please promote Maria Hickey?
Oh, yes. Sorry, Maria.
And I'm going to share my screen if that works for everybody.
Yes, please.
Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good evening. For the record, Tim Santos from Holmes and McGrath, representing the applicant. Property is located at 176 Waterside Drive along Fiddler's Cove. The resource areas on or within 100 feet of the property are Fiddler's Cove itself. To the east, Salt Marsh, Coastal Bank, and then land subject to coastal storm flowage. Property is currently developed with an existing single-family home, garage, deck, as well as a walkway and pier to the rear. We're here tonight looking for your approval to do some both modifications to the deck in the rear, as well as some removal of landscape features, installation of lawn and native plantings, and as well as a invasive species management plan along the bank that I'll let Maria address. I'm going to quickly review the deck modifications, then let Maria talk to the plantings, and then we can address any questions you have. So hold on one second. So currently to the south of the house here is a deck we're proposing to be removed, as you can see here. And the plan is to remove the set of steps that comes down from the rear of the deck, and the deck will be expanded to connect to this new deck to the northeast portion of the house. This deck will have a set of steps that comes down to a lower deck, and there'll also be a hot tub constructed on that deck as well. We are proposing to remove the boardwalk access and this octagon sitting area that leads to the pier. And as you can see, I'm going to zoom in on this, so please hold on a second. As you can see from the colored plan here, we are planning to plant these areas back in once they're removed. This aqua band that runs along the top of the edge of the clearing on the bank, that's a perennial border. These hatched areas in this lime green color, that's native plantings, and it's about 980 square feet of native plantings. And then we're also proposing a invasive species removal plan for the bank with 4,400 square feet There are 3 trees currently that exist behind the house in the crushed stone area. We're proposing to relocate those trees to the northern lot line, as well as planting 5 additional cedars along that lot line as well. And I did forget this, so I apologize. There is a proposed bluestone walkway that extends from the driveway to the house. We have provided calculations of the impervious structures within the A and the B. And as stated on the plan, in this corner of the plan here, there's a reduction both in the A and the B. So the plantings that we are proposing aren't for mitigation, but to enhance the buffer zone. So I'll go back here for Maria, turn it over to her, and she can discuss the native plantings and the landscaping surrounding the property, as well as the invasive species removal. And if you want me to take the plan down, I can, or I can leave it up for her, whatever she'd like.
Why don't you leave it up for the moment? Maria, you're up.
What do I need to hit? Unmute, start video? Am I
You're-
on?
You're all set.
Perfect. Okay, good evening, everyone. For the record, Maria Hickey from Maria Hickey and Associates Landscaping. For those of you that did not go out to see this property, we are recommending or asking for permission to make some significant improvements, starting with, there's a wooden boardwalk that goes from the back of the house down to the dock. There's really not any purpose for that. We want to take that out and replant with native shrubs and native perennials. There are just random rocks, like stones, for lack of a better word, that were just placed all in the backyard, I guess is a landscape feature. And then instead of any plantings or lawn, it's like 3/4 inch stone across the whole backyard. So starting with the south border property line, there's a whole big area that's just mulch. There's no plantings whatsoever. So we want to add a nice mix of native shrubs, viburnum, blueberry, winterberry, just to enhance the habitat value, because right now it's just bare, it's barren. And there's almost like, I'm going to call it a dry river creek bed. It's an ornamental feature of just like little sized rocks and really nothing. So we're going to just take that out and add more native shrubs in there. Within the resource area, there are invasive vines, such as quite a bit of bittersweet that's starting to wrap around everything. There was some Russian olive, not a lot. And then obviously some porcelain berry vine. So we want to just go in and manually extract those and replant with native shrubs to kind of beef up this resource area a little bit. And then there's steps on the side of the south side of the house that are like dug in. We're going to remove those. And then there are, I'm going to call it a stepping stone path that goes from the back of the house all the way around the front. We're going to remove that as well. And then, grass seed. So all in all, these are voluntary improvements that I believe really enhance the landscape and add some native species where we have none. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Tim, if you would. Already done. Thank you. All right. Jen and or Kevin, do you want to start?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think we received an email answering most of the staff, or answering the staff's questions and comments this afternoon. So I am all set unless Kevin has anything to add.
I do not, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. We'll go with commissioner comments. Betsy.
So I have no questions, and my only comment is it looks like a well thought out plan. Looks like it'll be nice when it's done.
Thank you, Betsy.
Courtney?
I'll second Betsy's comments. A nicely done project.
Thank you, Courtney.
It's always good when you guys give us the information where we don't need to have any concerns. Kevin,
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mark,
Looks good to me.
okay, Maury,
Thank you, Mark.
No questions.
Pat,
No questions.
Peter?
No questions. It looks good to me.
Wow.
Thank you.
Steve, you're in the house?
Yeah, sorry I'm late, boss. No questions.
All right.
I'll move to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Carlo
Second.
Hawk, second.
Okay. Before we go there, Jen, are there any public chat comments, questions?
No public chat, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, we
Tim,
have a mo-
send me those plans tomorrow.
we have a motion and a second to close this hearing. There's no further comments, gonna go for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Grenade, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's aye.
Pat? Pat? Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. This hearing is closed. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
time. Have a great weekend, and I'd like to wish everybody, because I'm probably not going to see you, have a great Thanksgiving and a safe holiday.
Thank
You
as
too,
well.
Tim.
Well,
Same to you both.
Thank you, everyone,
Take care.
and happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving. Okay,
You too, Maria.
all right, thanks.
Next up, Jim McCotch, 140 Racing Beach Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to perform invasive species management and to widen the driveway entrance to the property. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Tom Bunker up as a panelist to present the project. I believe you have one other project team member that I have to promote up.
I hope Emma is here.
Emma is here, Tom. I saw her. Okay.
Okay. She's the one that's really going to do this.
All right, and I'm promoting Emma from Blue Flax Design.
Hey, Tom, you're up.
Okay, well, I guess all I have to say here is I see Emma is here.
Yes, I can start, Tom, if you'd like me to.
Yeah, I was going to turn it over to Emma. Really, it's all about their landscape improvements. If Emma wants to.
All right.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Emma Votor with Blue Flax Design, representing the applicant. The property was purchased by Ray and Gemma Koch recently. It is a 1.6 acre lot that's developed with a single family home, attached garage, and there's an existing gravel driveway, brick walkways, and a patio.
Excuse me, Emma, are you intending to share your screen?
I can, yes. Can everyone see that?
Thank you.
Okay. So there is an existing gravel driveway, ways an existing brick patio on the north side. The property contains a large area of wetland. So if we look at the locus, about 70% of the entire lot is wetland area. There's a saltwater pond in the northwest corner, and then it transitions into salt marsh and then into bordering vegetated wetland closer to the house. So the upland portion of the lot, including the house, are entirely within zone A and B to the bordering vegetated wetland. There are two primary components to the project as it is proposed. The first is the improvement to the driveway layout, and the second is the proposed vegetation management. So I'll start with the driveway. When the property was purchased, the current owners inherited the existing driveway, which is very difficult to use. They're currently not able to safely get in and out of their second garage bay space. So the angle of the driveway doesn't work. The angle is strange and it's too tight to make the turning radius. So we are proposing to move the existing low retaining wall back a couple of feet so that they can have a safe turning radius into their garage. And that will result in an 85 square foot increase in driveway that's hatched on our plan right here. That will also require removing one pitch pine that's growing right on the edge of the retaining wall. We will be removing this section of fence here along the driveway and then transplanting several bayberry that are growing along the edge of the driveway now. They're very healthy bayberry. They're growing in stand, so it's difficult to say precisely how many we'll be transplanting. We won't really know until we get in there, but I would estimate anywhere 3 to 5 are being moved to this location here next to the resource area. And we blocked out a larger area than is necessary for that transplanting, just to be on the safe side. And this area here along much of the bordering vegetated wetland is bare ground, which is why we've chosen that location. We're also proposing to remove the dead tree that's closest to the driveway. There's a 10-inch oak here that's currently posing a safety hazard to property and people, so we're proposing to remove that. For the expansion of the driveway, we're providing mitigation at a rate greater than 2 to 1 within Zone A. In this location, we're proposing to remove the lawn and plant with a mixture of summer sweet clethra, cranberry bush viburnum, and a mix of native ferns as a ground cover. So I do have some photos of that area. So this area here is where we'll be removing lawn and planting mitigation planting. Let's see, I'm gonna kind of flip through these. They're not in order, so bear with me. And thought I had one of the driveway, but we'll hold off. The vegetation management as proposed, we will be removing invasive species really to provide a proactive approach to keeping those invasive species at bay. So to provide a little bit more background, the area between the salt marsh, the salt water pond, and the BVW, most of this has been overtaken by Phragmites, which unfortunately we don't recommend taking on the Phragmites management simply because of the size and cost of the endeavor to our client. All neighboring properties that have areas of high marsh are also invaded with Phragmites. And unless there's a conjoined ongoing effort to manage it, it would be a yearly and extensive effort for the foreseeable future. So we are not recommending that. But that being said, the area along the bordering vegetated wetland, all in our project area, is a relatively healthy native plant community, except for the presence of some invasives. We do have shrub honeysuckle, burning bush. We also have some aggressive native species like the wild foxgrape and greenbrier that are really starting to overtake in some of these areas. So because we have a limited amount of really healthy wildlife habitat in these areas, we want to maintain that by being proactive and removing the invasive species. So we would conservatively estimate that there's about 10 to 20% invasive species cover. It's realistically closer to 10%. We've accounted for the restored plantings accordingly by proposing 23 shrubs within that management area. And those would be planted specifically where invasives are coming out. And then we fully expect that by removing the aggressive and invasive vegetation, the existing native vegetation will continue to fill in and proliferate. Pending your approval, we expect that the work would take place this year while the ground is frozen to best protect the soil. Most of the removal is expected to be done by hand to protect the existing vegetation. The willow removal will be done with the help of a walk-behind skid steer, and we'll likely need to create an access path to get to the willow on the north side of the house in this area. So that could be done in a couple of different ways. Likely, we're going to need to flush cut shrubs just to protect them, and they will regenerate, but we need to create some sort of access path to be able to remove these because they are quite large. And we chose these in the front here to create an access path through in this direction, simply because these shrubs are already covered by aggressive vines. They're completely covered by foxgrape, which is a native. Our goal is not to eliminate it, but for the health of those shrubs and for the wildlife habitat quality and maintaining biodiversity, we think it'd be best to flush cut these, remove the vines, and allow them to regenerate after the gray willow have been removed. And then replanting will take place after one growing season, one full season of follow-up management to ensure good control of invasive species. So I think I'll stop there, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you have about the proposed plan.
Thank you, Em. If you would stop screen sharing. Thank you. Jen? Jen or Kevin, do you want to start?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I will. So Emma, can you clarify the area where you want to flush cut the bayberry and the clethra? That's only to provide access. It's not in that whole gray area of invasive species removal, because that was one of the staff's biggest concern, is the flush cutting of the existing native vegetation.
Yes, absolutely. And we can
Okay.
definitely provide a note clarifying that that's only to create an access path back there.
Okay, and how wide does that access path to get that skid steer in there need to be?
We'd probably need, I would say, about 6 feet.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, if you could add a note to the plan, that would be appreciated, because that was one of my largest concerns, where it just wasn't clear to me how much vegetation was being, native vegetation was being flush cut.
Sure.
Just to let the board know, the line of boulders, and I'm not sure if this was addressed, the line of boulders that are on the plan, kind of near where the septic system was, that those weren't approved. So I don't know what the board wants to do about that. Emma, if you want to quickly share your screen again, I can show you where they are. We did compare, we actually overlaid the plan for the septic over this one. And the amount of clearing is right. And Emma, if you could just put that cursor over the line of boulders. Nope, the one's up a little
up
further.
here.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Okay.
So those weren't on the original. You can stop.
Okay.
So the board can address that if you feel it's necessary. Emma, did Tom email you, or Alyssa emailed you our staff report, correct?
Yes, I have seen it.
Okay, so we obviously recommend replacing the cranberry viburnum with the arrowwood wild raisin. We addressed, you addressed how many bayberry bushes were being transplanted. So that was great. Thank you. You're not going to know until you get in there, correct?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And the ones that aren't being transplanted, what are you going to do with them? If I missed that, I apologize.
The ones that aren't being transplanted?
Yeah, you said you don't know how many you're going to transplant.
We're going to attempt to transplant all of them, but we don't know how many there are since they're growing in a stand right now.
Yeah. Okay.
I saw a question of how many. I could give you a square foot area, but it's
no, that's okay. Now that's fine. So we obviously recommend replacing the square footage of the invasive woody shrubs solely woody shrubs and not using the 500 fern species as part of that. So Emma, can you clarify if you're going to replace that plant material solely with woody shrubs, or is that fern area included in your calculation?
So the ferns are intended to serve as a ground cover. Typically, we would seed the area with a native seed mix underneath woody shrubs. So we're not replacing any woody shrub material with an herbaceous cover. We're actually planting under so that we're creating a multi-layered approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you said about 20% of that square footage is invasive species. So what we did was we took 20% of that square foot that Blue Flax provided with us. And I mean, you're proposing about 37 woody shrubs plus the 2 junipers. If you space them out 5 feet on center, they're 32, 4 feet on center would be 51 shrubs. Now, would you think that planting a little bit more densely might give them a better chance of holding back that Phragmites maybe, or?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
It's gonna be a problem.
I actually think that our estimate for invasive species cover is much closer to 10%. So I hope that helps clarify that. I think 10 to 20% is a little bit conservative. So if we were to run the numbers again with something closer to 10%, you actually come out to about half those shrubs. So in that area, we're proposing 23 currently. We could probably increase it by a few. But really what we're focused on is replanting the areas exactly where those shrubs are coming out. So we've located the general areas where the shrub honeysuckle's coming out, the burning bush and the gray willows, and we're putting back the shrubs exactly in those locations. So I don't want to overcrowd the clethra and the viburnum that's already in there. That's my only hesitation in increasing the numbers. We really based it on our analysis and our recommendations for our replanting and spacing.
Okay. Well, clethra should be planted closer to like a 4 foot on center spacing, but I'll let the board decide. Those are the only issues that we identified with the project, Jamie. And I don't need to continue the hearing for the note on the access path. But if the board wants to see a little bit more shrubs, we could always just add that to that revision as well. And that revision, as long as we clearly state what that revision is going to be at this hearing, you could put it in after. I don't think it's necessary to continue the hearing for that unless the board has something more substantial they want to see.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Kevin, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, Commissioner comments. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions or comments. Thank you for the plans.
Thank you. Peter?
I wasn't sure totally if the Phragmites at all was going to be removed or just let lie and nothing in the Phragmites would be disturbed.
So we're going to have to manage it out of the areas where we're proposing replanting. But beyond that, beyond our proposed project area, we're not planning to remove any of the Phragmites. And that's simply because of the extent of it, the fact that it is extended way beyond the property boundaries. It would just be such a huge endeavor.
No further questions.
Thank you. Pat?
No questions or comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Maury?
Could you just share that screen for 1 second I want to look at the ferns again.
Sure. The plant schedule or where they're located?
Location.
So we're planning to plant out just the edge and of this area here where it's hatched. And that's because there's no existing ground cover whatsoever. Once you get into this area that's shaded in darker green, we have sensitive fern and lots of herbaceous cover. But along the edge of where we're removing the lawn for the mitigation planting, and then along this entire edge here, there's virtually nothing growing. So we'd like to replace that with a native ground cover.
Thank you for sharing your screen.
Sure.
Maury, you're muted.
Am I muted still?
Nope, you're good now.
Okay. Putting ferns as a leading edge to herbaceous to woody indigenous, I always am concerned because it abuts the lawn. We know what happens to ferns, they just get mowed down. That's just literally a band of ferns, 900 square feet roughly of fern. The rest of the board will deliberate, but obviously, you know, I'm not going to allow 900 square feet, 1,000 square feet almost of fern to be the leading edge to the buffer planting.
Can I speak to that quickly? Do you mind?
Yes.
So I actually have some photos, if I can share my screen one more time. Let's see. Let me advance through. So along the edge, so along most of the edge, we'll be planting underneath woody vegetation to start, and then along most of this edge, it varies in location, but there is some kind of retaining wall along the entire edge of the lawn. So I don't have great photos pulled up, I apologize. Let's see. Even here, you can barely see it in this photo, but there's a boulder wall here along the edge of the lawn. So along the entire edge of that lawn, the lawnmower won't be able to get down there. Just
Okay, well, that makes me feel better. And Jen obviously wasn't that concerned about it, but 900 square feet included in your calculations is a lot for the amount that is being planted. The other question I have, you said you needed about 6 feet for a skid steer. Why aren't you using like a dingo with a grapple bucket on it that are only about 3 feet, 4 feet, maybe maximum? Because this just, wait, I'm not done. Just so the board understands, this is not this little surgical clean path to go in. They're gonna cut the tree down, the willows. They're huge. They're gonna obviously, whether they, you know, take it down piece by piece, but they're going to maneuver around these. There's going to be big areas around these that are going to be disturbed. Not that, I just want you to know that. It always sounds like it's this little path, little meandering, little 4-foot path. They pluck this tree out of the ground and it just disappears. There's going to be a lot of impact there. So I just want to, I don't know why you're not trying to use a smaller machine to do less damage, so you have less replanting, because when a skid steer turns and spins, while they're picking all that up, that flush cut clethra and bayberry, we should make it a condition that if any of it is damaged and it won't come back, that gets replanted. Otherwise, there's just going to be these naked paths in there. And so I think there's not, maybe there's an entrance path that's quite clear that you're going in, but where you're cutting all these willows down will not be a path. It'll be big, huge cleared area. Other than that, that was all I had. Thank you. And is it going to be any of them? Nope, that's it. Thank
you. So to address your concern about the skid steer, we are using a walk behind skid steer. So we would just be using a dingo. So it would be a smaller machine. And I said 6 feet. They may be able to do it with 4 feet but I think 6 feet is a safe conservative bet, because you're right. They're large trees that need to come out. And so I think that would make sense to give them a little bit more width on the path. And then we will plan to do the work again in winter when the ground is frozen, to try and minimize disturbance to the soils and any existing root or vegetation that's present around the willows.
You're muted, Maury. Maury, you're muted.
I didn't catch that. I think you were still muted.
No,
I'm not sure I understand.
I'm sorry, I hit a button. all I was saying is that if it doesn't come back, that it'll be monitored and you'll just take care of it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Mark,
I have no comments. Looks good.
thank you. Kevin,
No comments.
okay. Courtney,
Unless I'm missing something, why is it you're picking on the gray willows?
The gray willow is an invasive species, and they will proliferate in high marsh areas, especially. So we'd like to try and reduce the number of invasive species and preserve the native habitat.
I mean, the willows do provide good habitat and they're pollinators and all that. So I mean, it's not like some invasives, but that's okay.
They're aggressive invasives though, Courtney.
Okay.
anything else, Courtney?
Oh.
Betsy?
I have no comments.
All right, I think it's a pretty detailed plan. I mean, there's a couple little things, but overall. Jen, is there anything in the public chat comment function?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird second.
One
Okay,
second, I do need a revised plan showing that access route.
But we don't need to
And-
continue purpose, do we?
No, I said before we didn't, and staff would feel a little bit more comfortable with bumped up numbers. Just a few additional shrubs in that area, so
We can definitely do that.
thank you, Emma.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so we have a mutual understanding of what's the plan
Correct.
and would show, so, okay. So we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. If there's nothing else, I'm gonna call for the vote. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Everett's aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. This hearing is closed. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good Thanksgiving, both of you too.
Thank you. You too.
Next up, David P. and Kathy E. Campbell, 0 Millfield Street, map 49A, 04, parcel/lot 064-001, Woods Hole, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a single-family dwelling and garage with associated paved driveway, crushed stone parking area, retaining walls, to install native trees and shrubs, and to install a drainage system. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Tom Bunker will be presenting this project as well. Tom, are you the only one on your project team for this?
Yes, I'm the only one here tonight. Yep,
You're it? Okay.
I'm it. Thank you. I'll put my screen up.
Yes, please.
Okay, you have the screen here. For the record, my name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design. And, well, I didn't prepare this plan. This is just to show you generally, this is the locus, is the corner of Millfield Street. This is Millfield running along here. And Quisset Avenue goes north from Millfield. And School Street's not labeled, but that's what goes south from Millfield. So we're at this vacant lot right at the corner, and you can see surrounded by all these houses, and the flood zone cuts through half of the lot as shown on this plan. I'll also show you down here is this blue line. This area here is Eel Pond in Woods Hole. We have our plan here. So like on the GIS, we have the flood zone line coming through the site like this. It's a vacant lot, so I'm not putting up the existing conditions plan, but you can see the topography in behind there. It is generally most of that area in the flood zone has a slope steeper than 10%. And I have drawn on here in our symbol, this line with the sort of the triangles in it is the top of coastal bank. And so you can see the flood zone is here. I've calculated that up above this area here is steeper than 4 to 1, and therefore the coastal bank extends above the flood zone to the point where the land is no longer 4 to 1 or steeper. And so basically what we're proposing to do is put a driveway coming in just uphill from a utility pole. It's on Millfield Street, and it will bifurcate into one driveway that goes downhill and will go down to a garage and a lower level garage under this building, in this building. That area there is currently gets as low as elevation 5 in one corner, but let's say right in here where my hand is, it's elevation 6, but we're filling up slightly in this location up to 7.3. And so we do have a low retaining wall along this area up to the top of wall elevation 8. So it'll be a 2-foot high wall. Yeah, but that wall does increase in height toward Millfield because it hits the driveway will hit Millfield Street at elevation 11 and 12, whereas the elevation in the ground down here is at 6. Actually, the driveway gets up to be slightly above, for grading purposes, the driveway gets up to elevation 13. So this right through here is a 7-foot high wall. But it is almost 9 feet away from the property line, and we have it filled in with native shrubs and trees here. And actually, the wall gets as close as 4 feet to the property line, and we've put some other called out fastigiate or columnar arborvitae, if that would be allowable. Or sometimes you can get a columnar form of juniper. If not, we'll find something else and go in there, mainly to want taller screening here between the house to the west and the garage. The upper side of the driveway will go up to where there is a house up in this location. The ground elevation around it, the final elevation will be just the 15 contour runs through here, which will be a slight decrease from what it is now, and then gets up around 16 or so. So we cut down a little bit there. And between the house and the garage, this area, which I've colored in green, is being filled. So right now, that grade is down at, it's a little hard to follow the contours through here, but it's around 10 or so. So behind the garage will be filled about 5 feet deep up to elevation 15 here also. And then a wall built into this hill to hold back this small lawn area in this location. So this is built, a couple corners of this are on top of it crosses over the coastal bank in this location. The garage is set into the slope in this location, as I said, with the entrance down at elevations 7.5. There will be interior stairs coming up this side of the garage, out a door right here, out to this level here, where we'll be at the same elevation, walk across to the rear door of the house. Extensive drainage. Basically the roof drains will all join together. They'll run down the 2 sides of the garage and have the leaching chambers, H20 leaching chambers under the driveway. This area will be dug out of bad material and then filled up to, as I said, elevation 7.5. So this will be in a pervious material here for infiltrating the stormwater into the ground. And other pipe, some of this pipe from the house will go down to that area. Some of the drainage pipes from the front of the house will go to this catch basin, which this catch basin takes the runoff from the driveway and takes it into the catch basin. I have another leaching pit in this location, a 6 foot diameter, 4 foot deep pit here, and it will have a grate on it so that if that bubbles over, it can run down and then be caught into this area where there is a larger drainage system. That is our proposal. The green areas here, basically the lawn, the landscaped areas, native shrubs and trees along this side. There's an area in here which is 3 native trees and above a shrub understory in this location. That's where where it's a bit of a slope. The lawn area, this area too is being filled. So this is a level lawn area. This slope here, in the current conditions, is fairly steep, but because the driveway is being filled in this area here, it will be less steep than it is now in the final conditions. I can address a couple of the staff comments. Number one, I haven't had time to calculate the cut and fill volumes. If you want that, I can take time. I'll need a continuance to calculate those volumes for you. The question about how far is this from the nearest coastal resource area. So this is our plan here, our site. And years ago, we had done a job for this property on Eel Pond. So we do have that information. It's from there's a seawall along Eel Pond right here. And we have about 190 feet from the Eel Pond seawall to the corner of the property. And in this property, there's a low area, which was marshy. And there was marsh vegetation here. And so we have 160 feet from this marsh to the corner of the property. And the zone A for this marsh is this curving line we have drawn on this property. I will note that on the plan that I had filed, I had aligned this plan in the wrong location. And on the plan that I filed, and you can see part of it on this plan here, there's a zone A line, which I have labeled on our plan as the salt marsh zone A. That's actually incorrect. The zone A for the salt marsh is actually much farther away than what I showed on our site plan. That's the distance from the coastal resource area to our site. I've shown the portion of the coastal bank on our plan, which is steeper than 4 to 1. But I will contest what staff says. There could be a 25-foot no disturbance zone of the Falmouth wetland regulations, and non-eroding coastal banks not in a velocity zone with a slope greater than 4 to 1 and not adjacent to other wetland resources, not adjacent to other resources, but within 100 feet of other resources, have a 25-foot zone A. So I don't think that says that there could be a zone A because it's a 4 to 1 slope, because I think any of this 25-foot zone A must be within 100 feet of other coastal resource areas, is the way I read it. That was the staff questions. I will get into some little talk of coastal bank where I'll zoom out on this plan here. And this is a question of significance. And if you notice, our plan is right here. If I zoom out a little, keep going out. All of Woods Hole Village is in the flood zone. And in my opinion, this area right here, although this could stop, can act as a vertical buffer in this small location. But if the flood orders get to this point, up to this vertical buffer, the damage has been done. It's doing basically no storm water damage prevention in the area of Woods Hole. It's in that one respect, I'd say it's the significance of this one small area is, or I would say the lack of significance. I'd say this small area is insignificant relative to what could happen in a storm. It is, as any vertical buffer, your regulations say when the commission determines that a coastal bank is significant to storm damage prevention, or because of the vertical buffer, the stability of the bank is critical. And this area currently is quite stable. And as I said in the narrative, and I was saying here, showed previously that we are creating actually less slope and flat areas. So in a 100-year storm, so I've now drawn in where the extent of where that water would reach at elevation 13. So here is the existing coastal bank, which is not being disturbed along this area. Here we have, this is the garage foundation wall is itself holding up this flat area at elevation 15, which is 2 feet higher than the flood zone. And this area here, as I commented, it was steeper, but because of the fill, this driveway and this area are less steep and thus less prone to erosion, and argue more stable than the current conditions, partly because we have a low retaining wall running through here, which the small flood waters will stop at this location, larger flood events will stop at this location, and it will there will be no water, no storm water approaching any 4-to-1 slope on this site. This coastal bank has no significance for providing sediment or critical coastal habitat, sediment to downstream beaches or dunes or other landforms like that. The various parts of the wetland regulations do focus on the stability of the bank. And, as I said, this is still stable. I feel this, in the context of this project, that this coastal bank is insignificant to the larger flood damage prevention, certainly of the Woods Hole Village itself. And in the context of this project, where the stability and the protection of this bank is being improved, I feel that we're increasing, if anything, we're increasing the protection from stormwater damage in this location. In the past, we have had projects approved on coastal banks in velocity zones, on coastal banks in velocity zones within 100 feet of wetland resource areas. I do have of a finding from one such project where the commission made a finding. The proposed driveway will be connected, although the proposed driveway will be located over a coastal bank, commission finds the proposed work will not adversely alter the bank's ability to provide flood control and storm damage prevention and will not adversely affect the wildlife habitat value of the bank. This bank was in an A flood zone, but it's also within 100 feet of a bordering vegetated wetland. A difference in this is that we're not within 100 feet of any other resource area. There is a BVW several houses over surrounding the Woods Hole ball field. This is the Zone B, 100 foot from that ball field wetland. Where is it? This wetland. There's several garages and houses between this wetland and our site. This is the 100-foot buffer for that wetland. Doesn't quite meet the site. And as I mentioned, showed this 100 feet from the eel pond, but we're actually much farther. We're 190 feet from eel pond to this site. That is our project, and I will be happy to take questions. Will I stop the share?
Yes, please. Thank you, Tom. Jen, do you want to start?
Oh, yes. Okay, Tom, first of all, the 25-foot setback, we had asked you to give us from other coastal resource areas because, as you put it, you erroneously put the salt marsh much closer to this particular project locus than it was labeled. So we weren't quite sure if like land under water bodies or inland bank or something like that came up further. So that's why we asked.
Yeah.
We said, I think how we phrased it was so that it would aid us in determining. So we have determined, so I agree with you, it is not adjacent or within 100 feet of a coastal wetland. Okay, so I agree with you on that. I do think we're gonna need the cut and fill calcs.
Okay.
Vertical buffer, you said that the bank could act as a vertical buffer. And that you are not altering the bank's ability, but you're altering the entire bank. You're putting a garage within the coastal bank that has a slope steeper to 4:1. So how exactly do you meet the regulation of 10.307C? Where it says that except as permitted above, which is all coastal engineering projects, no project shall be permitted on a coastal bank, that portion of a coastal bank with a slope greater or equal to 4:1. Splash, stop it. Was that Splash?
No, it wasn't Splash.
Oh, okay.
I think it's Pat's dog.
Not my guy.
I think it's my dog.
Can you explain how the placement of the garage and the alteration of that slope meets that particular regulation?
That particular regulation, well, in part, I feel that particular, it's just my feeling, but certainly I think most coastal bank regulations are written for banks which are really more coastal than this. I mean, that's why they're talking about, I think that's why they're talking about coastal structures in that, where, yes,
Okay.
taken literally, if all we can put up here is riprap, which I know we can't because the house isn't old enough, but we're talking about, coastal structures, bulkheads, piers, on this coastal bank wouldn't make sense because, we're not really coastal.
But it does meet the definition of a coastal bank, and you said so that yourself could act as a vertical buffer. And instead, you are deflecting that flood water with a 7-foot-high retaining wall and stopping that water that's going towards that parcel with that 7-foot-high retaining wall. So you're basically diverting the water, correct? I mean,
not
it's not water
necessarily.
elevation, but it's rising water, but you are going to cause impacts to the adjacent property. And you're altering, you're regrading, you're completely regrading that entire bank to panhandling, but you really are just going in and just altering the grades of that entire area. And that's what we have a big concern with. That 7-foot-high wall, so that's where the staff is. I mean, that's a lot of work on that bank. And just to say, because it's really, inland, it's at the edge of the coastal, the flood zone in the village, that it's really not going to matter. Well, if we said that every coastal bank really doesn't matter because by that point all the damage is done, then what are we really doing here? So,
Well, no, I mean, this is the coastal bank, and other than that provision under the coastal bank regulations, under the buffer regulations, this has no zone A.
it doesn't matter about the zone A, Tom.
No, I know that. I'm just saying.
You're
that this is-
literally recreating that bank. It's not about just the buffer. It's about the fact that you're completely altering the slope characteristics of that whole landform. So it's not just like we're working in the buffer zone regulations and it's cut and dry. You're actually altering a protected resource area. So that you have to get around. That's the problem that staff has. It's not the buffer zone.
Yeah.
It's the actual resource area itself. And
it's-
correct me that the
I
buffer
would
zone
say-
is a resource area.
Yeah.
So that's where the staff's concerns are, is the amount of regrading we're actually doing to that, this proposed project is actually doing to the landform. Because this is a pretty big structure for that area. So those were the staff's concerns, Jamie.
Okay, Kevin Newton, do you have anything to add?
1 second. The proposed project that Tom had brought up to try to convince you that you've done this before, there was an existing driveway to an existing house on that lot. And if you're talking about 114 Garland, 114 Quaker Road, Garland, I can show this board the plan. And it is a lot different, completely different set of facts than this particular project. So there was an existing house, an existing driveway. They were redoing the garage and putting a portion of the driveway over that bank. So
Well, and actually, it
different
wasn't
set
the
of
one.
facts.
It wasn't the one with the doing some work on the house. It was on the vacant lot where there's actually a new driveway going over coastal
Okay,
bank.
I'll bring that one up right now. I'd love having my computer at my fingertips. You can go on, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna look for this plan.
Kevin Newton, do you have anything to add to that?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, man.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna open up to commission comments. Mark, we'll start with you.
No comments at present.
Maury?
I had a few questions. One was, what was the height again, Tom? It's because it's not on my plan, the height of that wall on the southwest corner, right on Millfield
Yeah.
Street.
It's coming in off of Millfield. I think the highest it gets is about 7 feet,
What elevation will that be at?
13, and the grade, the existing ground right now is the 6-foot contour runs right through, and it will be up to 13, the driveway.
So my major concern here is that the water is going to be diverted. You're basically, if you look at the contours where the garage are, how this property is sloped, there's no longer going to be stormwater recharge. There'll be no vegetation on it. It says right on the plan that it'll be completely cleared within the limit of work. So I'm really concerned, Tom, that house number, I guess existing house 7 is at elevation 6, and the wall is to the east of it. So now you've literally built a moat around their house and diverted all the floodwaters there, whereas before they would all, if you look at the contours, it went toward the garage for floodwaters. And it's not just flood, it's also when we have 100-year storm, rainstorms and things like that. And I understand that you put the infiltrators in for the roof runoff and everything else, but they're not going to do anything for Mother Nature. And we've seen these before where they build literally a fortress wall around this new structure, and the people around it get all the impact of all the not runoff, but where now floodwaters cannot go anymore. So that's my major concern, and I don't think it does meet 10.305C, but that's just my opinion as well with Jen. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just let me jump in here. One thing, Tom, I did just bring up that plan, and that new driveway that the board did approve was coming off the existing driveway going into the vacant lot, and it was just going over a small portion of the coastal bank. It looked like it was keeping with the same general grades of that bank, and then going up into that vacant lot area. So it, again, completely different set of facts and flow pattern and everything else than what you have here. And if the board would like to see that plan, I can share it with you if you'd like.
I just suggesting that it could be a finding that could be made.
Pat,
I agree with Jen that 10.30 sub 7C applies to this coastal bank, which has a slope greater than 4:1. And with regard to Tom's comments about this coastal bank regulation only applicable to a coastal bank next to the coastline. If you go down to 1037D, the next provision, it deals with coastal banks within 100 feet of an ocean, salt marsh, etc. So it's distinguished in the very next section. And so I agree with Jen's interpretation of subsection 7C.
Could I ask what you said about the next section about 100 feet?
Yeah, the next section is 7D, and it says that no project shall be permitted on a portion of a coastal bank that is within 100 feet of land under ocean, salt marsh, or banks of salt ponds, or 75 feet of land subject to tidal action, freshwater wetlands, or banks of intermittent streams. So that addresses that issue about the proximity to the water.
Right. So that one doesn't apply.
That's right.
anything else?
No,
Pat?
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Peter?
I agree with Jen's assessment.
Okay. Steve?
Oops, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the site plan, there's an area that's called encroachment bylaw. I'm just unclear what that means.
Oh, what?
Encroachment bylaw?
Oh, by lawn.
A lawn.
It just means that the neighbor's lawn is on this lot.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy,
I agree with Maury's concerns about stormwater runoff from this area. You're completely changing the topography here. And actually, I don't quite understand how you have your bank delineated. There's one portion of the bank which goes straight up the contour lines. So I don't know how that can be the top of the bank. But along with that, I realize that these are Norway maples, which are invasive too, but this lot does provide a lot of wildlife habitat. It doesn't say things have to provide wildlife habitat just for things that live right on the coast. I mean, there are lots of organisms here birds that are here that probably feed in the coastal zone. So, yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised you didn't provide cut and fill calcs, since that's a big component of this project. That's all, Jamie.
thank you. Courtney,
So Tom, you've gotten pretty loud and clear messages from Jen through many of the people in the commission. So what say you to this? How do you convince us that their concerns are not warranted?
I think strictly speaking about a bank, I think concerns aren't warranted because it's not making it's not destabilizing it. There's a lot of wildlife habitat already, and again, just because of a landform doesn't mean that the trees growing on that landform have any more habitat significance than trees growing on a flat area. And I know that Norway maples, can be habitat just like other maples, but I don't think that just because they're growing on or near a coastal bank makes them better than trees growing on a flat area. The deflection of floodwaters, I understand that concern toward the house number 7, and I can look at changing that driveway. I had that bulge in the driveway so that someone could turn from the upper driveway down into the lower driveway. I can look at reconfiguring that so that it will not deflect the floodwaters, although I'm not sure the floodwaters, some floodwaters might come from Eel Pond, others would come across the ball field, depending on the direction of the storm. So I'm not totally convinced that that retaining wall there of the driveway will hurt the neighbor, but I can take a look at that. Andrew cut and fill caps.
I have no questions.
you good, Courtney?
Yep.
Kevin,
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Tom, the base of the garage is at elevation 7.3, am I reading that right?
That's correct.
And the existing elevation is 6?
Right there at 6, yes.
Okay. And the top elevation of your wall is 8 feet, so you're going 2 feet above existing grade?
Yes,
Okay.
at that location.
I'm just trying to follow how it's trapping, it's creating the moat to number 7.
Well, it's not a moat, it's one-sided. I mean, there'll be a wall on this one side of the house. I mean, these aren't rushing waters. It's not a velocity zone. But obviously there has to be some movement of the water for it to flow inland.
Okay. All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chairman, I just want to reiterate, I don't understand how you can say you're not destabilizing this bank when you're completely changing the topography, putting retaining walls and structures on this bank. So that was the staff's major concern. But there are no chats at this point.
Okay, do we need to continue because of the cut fill calcs?
That is going to be up to Tom.
The cut and fill, yes, and I will look again at the, I'll look at several factors of this plan.
Okay.
And see what I can do.
Mr.
How
Chairman,
much time do you need, Tom?
What's that?
How much time do you need?
Well, definitely more than 2 weeks.
Want
Depends.
the 9th or the 16th?
What's that?
9th or the 16th, or did you want to put it off until after the first of the year?
No, I'll go for the 16th of
16th? Okay.
November.
That's a
Tom, is that an official
last meeting
request?
before Christmas.
I request a continuance to December 16th.
Thank you.
So move, Berg.
fellow Hawk second, but I did have one more thing to add to Tom, to maybe put the top of the wall on all the walls from each end. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until December 16th. Are there any other comments? All right, I'm going to take the vote. Betsy,
Glenfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Fellow Hawks eye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve,
No.
is unanimous. This hearing is continued until 12/16. Thank you, Tom.
All right.
Thank you, Tom.
See you in 4 weeks.
Night. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Next up, Jennifer Buterow, Eversource Energy, Minot Road Bridge, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install approximately 1,080 linear feet of electric conduit and 4 manholes across the Minot Road Causeway over Green Pond in Falmouth, Mass. For the record, it's East Falmouth. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just have promoted John Ventura up from Eversource. I'm assuming he is giving the presentation tonight to present the project.
Thank you.
Oop, I'm sorry. Rebecca Weissman is giving the presentation and I'm promoting her up right now as well.
Excellent.
Sorry about that, Ms. Weissman. Where'd she go? There she is.
It's going to be Rebecca.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, Becky Weissman with SWCA Environmental representing Eversource. Also, James Clancy is also with Eversource. He may be on the call as well, if you wanted to promote him. James is in the licensing and permitting group at Eversource, and John Ventura with Eversource is in the, he's the engineer for the project.
Okay, I just promoted, John has been promoted up and I just promoted Mr. Clancy up.
Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
Can everyone see? All right. So the project is as was mentioned, it's at 1,080 linear feet of electric conduit and 4 manholes that are being proposed across the Minot Road Bridge over Green Pond in East Falmouth. The purpose of the project is to increase the reliability of the electric supply to the those peninsulas that are on that in East Falmouth on the southeast side, and especially due to their location in areas subject to coastal storms and due to their vulnerability to flood areas. So again, it's a reliability project. Just to get you kind of familiar with what this map is showing, this is the environmental resources map for the project. In this dashed line here is the proposed conduit. These boxes are, 4 boxes are the manholes. The blue hatch line is the floodplain. So the majority of the proposed work is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. On the north side of the road, it is the 100-year floodplain. On the south side of the road, it is the velocity zone to that floodplain. We also had a couple resource areas that we identified during field delineations, including salt marsh. We flagged salt marsh here and salt marsh here, and also had 100-foot buffer zones that were established to those on either side in the green dashed line. And then coastal bank is shown as this blue dashed line that was also delineated. And also the 100-foot buffer zone is off of that as well. So the work that's proposed is to install this 1,080 linear feet of conduit. What it's going to happen is it's actually going to start at this, there's a utility pole just off the edge of the roadway and the roadway shoulder. The line is going to connect into that utility pole. It's then going to be installed below ground within the pavement of the roadway from in a 24-inch wide trench, so 2-foot wide trench. Up until this point at this manhole, it's going to, this conduit's going to kind of daylight, and then it's going to be installed by being attached to the the north side of the bridge here. And I have a photo somewhere I can show you for, nope, that is not it. Somewhere I had a picture. I'll have to pull the picture up. There's an existing, I believe, water line that's attached to the bridge already, and so it's going to be installed parallel to that. So that'll go from this point to this manhole, and then again, it's going to be installed within the paved portion of the roadway up until it gets to this utility pole, which is within the roadway shoulder, and it'll be connected into that utility pole. Work again is proposed within, oh, there's one other piece of work, and that is a 30-foot by 50-foot staging area that's located at this marina parking area. And that will be used for equipment storage and materials storage. Work is proposed again within the land subject to coastal storm flowage, as well as within 100 feet of coastal bank and coastal salt marsh and land subject to tidal action. Following construction, all areas will be restored to pre-existing conditions. So roadways will be repaved. The area where we go into the roadway shoulders, which will be at the utility poles and at the transition from the underground component to being attached to the actual bridge structure. All of those areas will be restored, reseeded to their existing conditions. And also Eversource has contracted SWCA to provide environmental compliance monitoring during construction. We will oversee the installation of the erosion control barriers that are proposed in this location. And we will be doing weekly compliance inspections to throughout construction to make sure that the resource areas are being protected. We also do a couple of inspections post-construction to make sure the areas are being properly restored to existing conditions. And that is my presentation, and I'm open to any questions, or if John or James had anything they also wanted to add.
Thank you, Rebecca. If you would stop sharing your screen. Thank you. Jen?
Yes, Chairman, the staff had reached out prior to tonight's hearing. All our comments were addressed. All we would say was that we would have a pre-construction meeting with the contractor prior to the installation. Rolling hay bale line. This is simple.
Okay. Kevin, anything you'd like to add?
Nothing to add, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Rebecca, I think you said this, but I'm going to ask anyway. Is this in addition to or replacement of an existing line?
I believe it's in addition to. Can you respond to that, John?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I can explain that. I'm actually the manager of distribution engineering for Southeastern Massachusetts. So this is a good project for us. That area right now, Davisville Peninsula and Pasket each has almost 1,000 customers on them, and there's no way to tie them to another source if there's like a broken pole or something. So this connection will bridge literally the bottom of those two peninsulas and allow us to back up in either direction if there's a problem. So it's a good enhancement to the system. If there's ever any work needed on the bridge, of course, we can de-energize and remove cable if needed. But this is a very good reliability improvement for the area.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Comments, Betsy?
Yeah, and nothing like redundancy. It's a good project. People on both sides will be happy about that. Well, hopefully we don't have bad storms and have electricity go out, but if it should, this should help.
We've been doing okay lately.
Pardon me?
We've been doing okay. Like in this recent event, things went pretty well.
Yeah.
Courtney?
No questions.
Kevin?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mark?
I have no questions.
Maury? Pat?
No questions.
Peter?
No questions.
Steve?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Carlo, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. There's nothing further. I'll go for the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Gurney, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
Thank you. It is unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Keep our lights on.
All right. Next up are continued hearings under notice of intent. First up is William and Elizabeth Houlihan, 352 Sippowisset Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install mitigation plantings required under a previous order of conditions to restore an illegally cleared area of buffer vegetation and to remove an unpermitted patio. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the board may remember we heard this simultaneously with an enforcement matter. The enforcement matter has been, enforcement order was sent out. That area has been in active restoration since that last hearing. Unfortunately, the notice of intent hearing, which was to remedy an order from 1996 in which the mitigation plantings no longer existed, and there was an unpermitted patio on the property. That's what this notice of intent was for, to reestablish the required mitigation planting for the construction of the house back in 96, and to remove that unpermitted patio was delayed due to the issuance of a DEP file number. We've been working with the applicant's representative to move this project along. So that's where we are. We do have that DEP file number. So that kind of closes out the record. The plan has been submitted. It was submitted, I think, a couple of weeks ago in anticipation of having that file number a few weeks ago. The staff approves the plan. We have no concerns with it. So that's where we are. The applicant has requested that the board vote the order of conditions tonight because this project was so delayed for the issuance of that file number. I have checked with both associate and senior town council, and they see no reason why the board cannot do that if you are inclined to do so.
we'll go through that in comments.
Okay.
Kevin, do you have anything to add?
No, Mr. Chairman, Jen said it all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so to be clear, we're looking to close this because we now have the DEP number.
Correct.
And we'd like to vote for the order of conditions tonight as well. So if anybody has any comments that would help them in whatever manner, let's get them out now. So I'm going to start with Steve.
No comments, Mr. Chairman. I think we should move forward.
Excellent. Peter?
No questions or comments.
Pat?
No comments.
Maury?
No comments.
Mark?
No comments.
Kevin?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Courtney?
No comments.
Betsy?
No comments.
All right. Is there anything in the chat function, Jen?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Move to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing and take it under advisement. And again, we'll be voting on the order of conditions later in the meeting.
Point of
Sorry?
discussion. Point of discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Wayne Tavares is here representing the applicant, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Thank you very much, Jen, for presenting it the way you did. That was very clear. We have two issues on the board. I'm just a little confused. Taking care of a violation. The second issue you guys have put under wraps. So I understand that. How do we finish off this violation issue completed? How does it come full circle?
Okay, so Wayne, you'll need to request that we, just like a certificate of compliance, you'll need to request that we issue compliance on the enforcement order. So we'll need a request from you for that. Okay, once the board issues conditions for the mitigation planting and removal of the patio. Once that work has been completed, you would then again request a certificate of compliance for the 1996 order of conditions, and then we'll see what the board decides to vote for conditions for this particular order. Okay. But
Okay, so we're
I
close.
can talk with you about that tomorrow, Wayne.
All right, very good. Okay, and just so the board knows, thank you very much for your accommodation here tonight. But all phases of that, the violation planting, the mitigation planting, the removal of the patio is complete. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You as well. All right, so if there's no further comments, we have a motion and a second to close this hearing. I'm going to take the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Pat? I'm sorry,
Yes.
Maury?
Oh, Hawk's eye.
Sorry, Pat. You're up now.
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
Thank you. It is unanimous. This hearing is closed.
Okay, thank you very much again. Good night.
Thank you, Wayne. Want to stay in the attendees list until we vote the order, or do you want to leave the meeting?
No, I want to stay for the whole thing. Sure.
Okay, Thomas or Justin, can you please place Wayne back into the attendee list? I don't have that function. I can just remove him. Thank you.
All right. Next up is the town of Falmouth, and that has been continued. Therefore, next is Joan Spolaris, 78 Squibnocket Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to seek after the fact approval for driveway and front walk modifications, construction of a retaining wall, modifications to the south residential egress, and mitigation plantings. And just to remind everybody, let's stay on point with the current project at hand. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Arlene Wilson up and Brian Wall up to present the project.
Thank you. Arlene or Brian, whichever one would like to start, if we're ready when you are.
Good evening. Arlene Wilson, AM Wilson Associates, here for the applicant, Joan Spolaris. In accordance with your requests from the last meeting, we've provided 4 separate documents to you for your review. The first is a graphic showing the existing condition or the pre-existing condition pre-construction with all of the resource areas and their respective buffers. We've colored those up. They were actually on that plan before, but they were hard to read. That plan also has in the middle section the approved site plan with all of the buffers and resource areas and overlain in red. So you can compare them, is what was actually constructed. And then.
Are you intending to share your plan?
I'm sorry, sure. There we go. And the lower plan is the existing conditions with the resource areas and the buffers. In addition to that, there is a letter dated the 10th of November from my office explaining why we haven't provided you with a building permit application based on the requirements of the State Wetlands Protection Act, and a submission from Brian Wall addressing variance issues in more detail. And a single page list of impact comparisons showing the difference between what was built and what was approved under SE 254277, which is the recently expired order of conditions. So for a little more detail on that, section 310 CMR 1005 4, I can't even read my own notes, E, says the building permits are not a prior obtainable permit under the Wetlands Act. I understand that this is a little bit of an oddity because the retaining wall that you're concerned about was built. But you have a copy of the plan for the wall, which has been stamped by a structural engineer registered in Massachusetts. I believe that the building department is aware of that wall. They have not asked us to date to obtain a building permit. If we get through with the wetlands process here, eventually someone will request an occupancy permit. And if the building department decides that they want a separate application for the wall at that point, the applicant will obviously have to do it. The bottom line here is that it's up, we believe it's up to the building department. Your concern is whether the wall is structurally stable and therefore not subject to failure in a way that would adversely impact the coastal bank below it. The stamp of the structural engineer on the plan is your assurance that that wall will stand up. We've also listed 3 variances which might be considered required for the project. We didn't ask for them before because the previous application was approved without a request for variances. And so it was our understanding that you didn't consider them to be required. We have a potential for variance under 1037D1A, which is work on a coastal bank within 100 feet of land under the ocean. That would include the mitigation plantings that are below the retaining wall and the improvement plantings around the back of the house. So 1030D2A, which is work on a coastal bank within 75 feet of land subject to tidal action. Again, that's the mitigation planting. And 1018-5A-4A, which is work in the 25-foot A buffer to a non-eroding coastal bank not in a velocity zone. That includes the changes to the driveway, which actually made the driveway smaller, as you can see in, make this work. Yeah, here we go. So the black line is where the driveway was approved, and the red line is where it was built. So you can see that the as-built is actually a little smaller than what was approved previously. The change, it also includes the changes in the front walk. The walk originally had a curve in it. It was a little closer to the house. Now it's angular and a little further from the house. Essentially, the the same impacts. And obviously the retaining wall and the fill area that accesses the side door, which is the point of major concern. The changes in this area, as we've noted before, allowed for the reduction of impervious surface of about 186 square feet. They also reduced the intrusion of work on the coastal bank. We talked a little bit about this the last time, but on this plan, you can see that there was grading that would have occurred from the retaining wall at the end of the driveway across the coastal bank to a point approximately in line with the east facade of the house. When the retaining wall was built, what it did was allow the grading on the lower section here, or that grading became unnecessary. So it pulled the work back about 9 feet. We've had the project engineer look at the fill volume that was necessary. It's about 3 cubic yards of a fill over the original amount of fill that would have been required. Really, very much at all. And in return, this whole area that was going to have been filled and replanted is now maintained at its pre-existing grade, and it still has been planted. So all of that shows on that single comparative sheet that we provided you, which also notes that the plan for requesting will have about 420 square feet of additional native shrubs in this area adjacent to the driveway and in the fill platform between the end of the driveway and the retaining wall. There's about 90 square feet less disturbance on that bank as a result, and about 175 square feet less disturbance except for mitigation plantings in land subject coastal storm flow. I think Attorney Wall may have a few things that he would like to amplify.
Mr. Wall?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may I share my screen for 1 second? To put
Yes,
on.
sir.
Let me see.
Can somebody turn their phone off, please?
Mr. Chairman, can you see that document called Impact Change from SE 25?
Yes.
Right, this is what Arlene was just talking about a minute ago. I'm going to be brief. I know the commission has heard this through NOIs, enforcement orders, and here we are tonight for another NOI. I've actually represented the Spolaris family since 2007 on this matter, and it's been a difficult project. It's had its ups and its downs, and I think that if I were on the commission, especially some of the members that have been through all of this, I might actually be not only irritated, but angry at the fact that there was a deviation. There never should be a deviation from an approved plan. And of all the projects for there to be one, this obviously wouldn't be the ideal project. But having said all of that, I know this commission well, and I know that you won't allow your emotions to rule the day here. I think if you look at the facts They're very clearly set forth on this sheet that Arlene is talking about. And when we were preparing for tonight's hearing, I asked her to put this together with Mike Barcelli's help too. And I'm just going to scroll through it. The commission did approve a driveway. If you've been out to the site, it's a very steeply sloping lot. So the level driveway requires there to be a retaining wall to hold it in. And as we discussed the last time, the project that was originally applied for had a deck to get into the side door. But in the settlement that was reached to allow this house to be built, the deck was removed. And so there had to be the landing. And so I think what happened was when the person that was building the wall, they should have followed the plan, but they didn't. They made it easier to get into the house. But if you look at the facts, the impervious cover, this is a comparison between what was approved and what was actually built. It's 186 feet less. The fill is 3 yards more. The mitigation provided is 420 square feet more. Improvement vegetation, 575 feet more. No change in the distance to the beach. The area of disturbance on the bank is 90 feet less. The area of LSCSF is 175 feet less. I would just ask the commission to look at the facts, and the wall is different, but the project is less impactful. And I would ask the commission to approve the NOI, give an after effect approval to the wall, approval to the planting that's being proposed, and that will end this project. It will allow a certificate of compliance to be issued. It will allow the enforcement matter to be rendered moot. I would just ask the commission to move in that direction. Thank you.
Brian, if you would stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen, do you want to begin?
Yes, I will begin by saying that thank you for the comparative plan. And Arlene, the comments or reasoning that you've tried to articulate about not being able to obtain a building permit. The Wetlands Protection Act operates under the assumption that these structures aren't built yet. So in order to build something, you need a permit. So we had asked you to go and get the permit from the building department that was issued for this wall that should have been granted prior to the construction of the wall. You don't go to the building department after you construct something and say, give me a building permit. So that's all I have to say for that. When you say the variances weren't requested, the last order of conditions was issued by this commission to facilitate the completion of this project when the contractor allowed the order of conditions to lapse, to basically expire while they were in the middle of constructing it. This board operated under basically the settlement agreement, which was a combination of a prior order, a prior notice of intent that had requested those variances. So shame on us for attempting to help you out once again on this project. I think those are my only comments. As far as the variances you think, you feel you need, one of the first steps in a variance request is hardship, and the hardship cannot be due to the applicant. And in this case, I'd have to say that the hardship was absolutely created by the applicant. Those are my only comments, Mr. Chairman.
Kevin, would you like to add anything to that?
Oh,
Kevin Newton?
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. I do not have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay. We're gonna open up to staff comments. We'll start with Maury.
No comments.
Pat?
Just very briefly, I want to emphasize something that Jen just said. This project is a result of a settlement agreement. And the settlement agreement was struck after the commission had denied the project and denied the variances requested for the project. After going to court, it was set and agreed to a settlement. You have in the paperwork that was presented by applicant a copy of the amended settlement order, but it fails to include what lawyers call the header sheet and the agreement, the settlement agreement itself, which incorporated by reference that document that you've seen in the package. And this settlement agreement says that this was as a result of a case where variances were denied, and that without admitting or denying the positions of either parties, the parties have decided to come to the settlement, and then references the agreement you've seen. So for the applicant to be saying that this is a project that didn't require variances from the commission is not an accurate statement of the facts in this case. And as Jen said, there was an extension given and even that lapsed. And that's why we're now under a different DEP number. But in each instant, the commission has always incorporated by reference the settlement agreement, which because of the nature of settlements, a variance wasn't part of the paperwork. We don't agree or deny, we just go forward and settle the project in this fashion. I have nothing else to say.
Thank you. Peter?
No questions.
Okay. Steve?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Betsy?
No questions.
Courtney?
So I just want to be clear. So we're all agreed there was no building permit applied for this wall.
That's correct.
Okay. Because there's a lot of verbiage and a lot of testimony, but I just wanted to get to the heart of it. Second question. There was a submission from Wilson Associates that had 3 different plans on it. And the middle one said the approved plan. And it shows the retaining wall that was not approved by us. So I'm confused. Would you unconfuse me?
Arlene?
If I might, if you look at the rest of the title for that, it says with as-built overlay. So what's in red on that plan?
So
is
what was
was
not approved was that half round thing.
that is
We
what
approved the driveway wall, but we did not approve that quarter round entity, which is at the heart of this right now. Is that correct?
that's shown in red on that.
We didn't approve that in the order of conditions or in the settlement agreement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions, and I move to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
We're not done yet. Kevin?
I'm done. No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Mark?
I have no comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Pat has a question,
I'll
Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to reiterate, Mr. Chairman, I know this was asked at the earlier part of this hearing, that all the matters regarding this property and the various filings become part of the record, including without limit that document that I just referenced. It's a 2-page attachment that's on top of the amended order, and I will get that for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
there any other comments from the commissioners? Questions? All right. Courtney, I believe you had a motion.
Yeah, I made
Mr.
a,
Chairman, Brian Wall had his hand raised.
we get a motion and a second first, and then we can have comments.
Yellow Hawk second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close this hearing. Mr. Wall, you have something you'd like to add?
Yes, I'm going to be very brief, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'm just trying to advocate here for my client. Attorney Harris is correct. There was a cover sheet, but I would like to add, this project was denied by the commission, but the commission did approve a 2-bedroom dwelling with variances and a deck where the wall is currently situated. What happened was we were in court one day on the appeal of the 3-bedroom because the Spolaris family really wanted the 3-bedroom. And the judge noted that the approval was only 180 square feet smaller than the project that was denied. And so that's where the settlement came about, where the 3-bedroom foundation of 180 square feet bigger was agreed upon. And part of the concession was the deck was removed. And that gets us to why we need this access to the side door. The second comment that I'd like to make is I'd just like to pick up on something that Commissioner Byrd said. He's 100% correct that what was approved was one wall and what was built was another. But I would respectfully submit to you, that's not what's before you. This is not a question of whether the Spolarises are right or wrong. It's a question of whether the proposed project can be approved under the regulations. And our argument is that you did approve something and what was actually built is less than what you approved. And I would respectfully submit that on any other person that deviates from a project, the commission usually looks at what was different and could the differences be approved. And in this case, the differences are less than what was approved. And I would ask you to take that into consideration when you deliberate. Thank you.
You're welcome. Pat?
Just one last thing. I believe this has been mentioned earlier as well, but the first application by the Spolarises was approved with variances, and the commission instructed their legal representative to include in the next pleading that that was an error. They should never have granted those variances. And so when the second notice of intent was filed, the commission looked at it and denied the variances, and then we went into appeal. Nothing further.
Thank you for the clarification, Jen.
Pat, is that correct? Didn't we, I thought we denied the first one and approved the second one, and then we went to the court?
In reverse. The first, Brian can correct me on this, but my memory of the chronology is that the first application was approved, but the Spolarises appealed the conditions in that. And then the second notice of intent was denied. And then we got into settlement discussions.
No, the very first application was denied. And then they came back again
Yes.
and pleaded their case.
Yeah.
And that's when we gave variances, and then they didn't like that, so they came back with another notice of intent for a bigger house, and we denied that, and that's when it went to settlement.
Actually, if I may, the record's now kind of all over the place. And no one should be faulted for not remembering, because this is, 14 years ago. But what happened was the Spolarises applied for a 3-bedroom house with a deck and a driveway, and they were denied. And so I was representing them at the time. I said, why don't we try to make it a little smaller, and we'll go in and ask for a 2-bedroom and see if we can get approval. And the commission saw fit to approve the 2-bedroom, but I had appealed the denial of the 3-bedroom. And then Mr. and Mrs. Spolaris said to me, well, it's only 180 square feet. Why can't we have the 3-bedroom? We should have the 3-bedroom. And that's why we ended up pursuing that litigation. And it ended up in the settlement that we explained that the 3-bedroom foundation was approved as part of the settlement. And the price, kind of the exaction or the compromise, I should say, was that the deck had to be removed. And it was a condition that said the foundation shall never be expanded in any way. That's kind of the fact pattern of how we got to where we are today.
All right. Sorry for the confusion, everybody.
It's okay, and it's all by way of background. It's not really exactly relevant to what we're talking about today, but I just wanted to set the record straight.
Yep,
Thanks.
and then after all of that, Pat, that's when the commission filed the paperwork with the courts to say that that the commission made an error in law when granting the variances for this second notice of intent in Spalaris. I think that's what the point you were trying to make.
Correct, but I had the things reversed.
Yeah, you just had them backwards, correct.
Yep.
All right.
So Jamie, I have one more comment, and that is Maury seconded this, but Maury is actually not on the quorum. So I'm going to second it.
Okay. All right, does anybody have anything else they'd like to add? Excellent. We have a motion and a second to close this hearing and take it under advisement. I'm going to call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark? Mark, you're muted.
Gurney, aye.
Thank you. Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. This hearing is closed. Thank you, Arlene. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, everyone, for your time and your patience.
Thank you, Arlene.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving. Brian, I'm assuming you're staying for the next couple of hearings? Okay.
Next up, Stephen Bell, 64 Muskego Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install a 4 by 25 foot float adjacent to an existing licensed concrete bulkhead and to replace the existing timber access stairs.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Mike Borselli up to present the project, as well as Brian, I believe, is on this project team as well.
Mike, we're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering. I represent the applicant, Stephen Bayless. This is a continued hearing. There were some minor revisions that I could review briefly by sharing my screen.
Please.
I'll keep it brief. The project was, I think, relatively well received, but there were a couple of things that you wanted us to add to the plan. First of which was the mooring field, which is now shown on the plan. Second of which was based on a comment from a butter that the float would be less than 3 feet from the bottom at certain tides. So in order to mitigate that, we proposed and shown a cross-section float stops so that the buoyancy on the below the float will maintain a minimum separation of 3 feet from the bottom at all tides. And that sums it up. I'm happy to answer any question.
Short and sweet, I like that. Jen,
No questions or comments.
Kevin, Newton, do you have anything to add? All right. Somebody's duck keeps quacking, getting kind of annoying. All right, Betsy, comments?
No comments.
Courtney,
No comments.
Kevin,
No comments.
Mark?
No comments.
Murray, you're not on the quorum. Pat,
No comments.
Peter,
No comments.
Steve,
No comments.
Jen, is there anything in the public function?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. I'm going to take the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. This hearing is closed. Thank you for that compelling argument, Mike.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next up, Michael Cacchadorian, 50 Muskego Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install a float adjacent to an existing licensed concrete bulkhead. Mr. Bonazzoli, you're back up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Again, for the record, Mike Bonazzoli representing the applicant. I'm going to share my screen briefly.
Okay.
This site may look somewhat familiar to you as it's directly adjacent to the hearing you just closed. Similar fact pattern, we had made an initial presentation. It was continued so that we could add a mooring field, and also the float stops necessary are shown in a cross section to provide for a minimum separation of 3 feet at all tides. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Jen?
No questions or comments.
All right. Kevin?
No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Betsy, for comments?
No comments.
Courtney?
Bird, no comments.
Kevin?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Mark?
No comments.
Comments.
Peter?
No comments.
Steve?
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen, anything in the public chat function?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
Make
you.
Make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird, second.
We have a motion, a second, to close this hearing. I'm going to take the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Gurney, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. This hearing is closed. Thank you again, Mike.
Thank you.
Next up, request to amend the existing order of conditions. First up is Wendy Hill and Susan Condon, 268 Surf Drive, Falmouth, Mass. Request to amend the order of conditions for Mass EP 254557 to delete the first sentence from finding number 2, referring to the property consisting of 2 units, and deleting special condition number 2, stating the unit owned by the applicant shall be the only unit connected to the tight tank. And before you get into it, I am recused myself from this hearing. I will stay on as moderator, and Pat has a disclosure she needs to make known. Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a professional relationship with Attorney Wall regarding matter not under the jurisdiction of the commission. I've disclosure with our appointing authority and the town clerk outlining that relationship and stating that I can act without prejudice on matters presented to commission by Attorney Wall. I'm making this disclosure to dispel any appearance of a potential for conflict. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. All right, Jen, you want to begin?
No, I think, Mr. Chairman, I think Mike or Brian should begin their presentation, and then I can ask questions.
Okay. Brian and or Mike?
Brian, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Brian Wall, I represent the applicants in this matter together with Mike Bonazzoli of Falmouth Engineering. I think the commission will remember this one. It was before you rather recently. You issued an order of conditions on September 2nd, 2020, allowing the installation of a tight tank and the abandonment of a cesspool. We're asking for some relief tonight because the conditions that were read in the notice of the hearing have caused some problems with regard to whether or not we can comply with them, which we can't. and also whether or not it conflicts with the Board of Health permit that allows the cesspool to be abandoned and the tight tank to be installed. The problems stem from, I think, what might be some confusion about rather unusual ownership of the property. This is a bathhouse down on Surf Drive, and it's co-owned by two unrelated people, the named applicants, Susan Kahn and Wendy Hill. And they own the property legally by what's called tenants by the entirety. And what that simply means is that each one of them owns all of it. And I was trying to think of a simple metaphor or illustration that I could give to the board. And it kind of reminds me of back when I was in college and I had a dorm room and I had a roommate. So the room each belonged to all of us. There wasn't one part of the room that was exclusive to the other. And that's exactly what happened here. However, going further with that dorm room metaphor, there were certain parts that by agreement of the dorm roommates, one side was one person's and one was the other. One person had a bureau and one had a bed, etc. So in this particular instance, if you were to go inside the bathhouse, there are two rooms. One is used by Susan Condon by agreement, and she has in it a kitchenette and a sink for washing up. So she has a kitchen sink and a sink. And Wendy Hill uses the other side by agreement, and she similarly has a kitchenette with a kitchen sink and a washing sink for washing your hands. And she also has that incinerating toilet. And so the idea of the project was to abandon the cesspool, put a tight tank in so that the incinerating toilet could be changed to a water-based toilet. And the commission did approve the project, but then the commission attached a condition that says the unit owned by the applicant shall be the only unit connected to the tight tank. And that leaves us kind of in an unclear area, because if Wendy Hill uses the permit to abandon the toilet and connect it to the tight tank and connect her sinks, does this condition prevent the connection of the other two sinks? And if so, where does that leave the other co-owner? Because the permit issued by the Board of Health says that in order to have the tight tank, the cesspool must be abandoned. And so we can't have Wendy Hill using the tight tank and Susan Condon using the cesspool. It's one or the other. And I would respectfully submit that the condition is using a term unit as if it were a condominium, but this is not a condominium. It's a co-owned property like the dorm room that I've mentioned. So we're asking for relief. We're asking for that condition to be deleted so that we can install the tight tank, abandon the cesspool, and connect all of the gray water that's currently going into the cesspool into the tight tank. That's what we're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Mike, do you have anything you want to add?
I do not.
Okay. Turn it over to staff. Jen?
Okay, yeah, a couple of questions, Brian, just because I'm trying to wrap my brain around this. So so you're saying that there's just there's how many rooms are in this building, the entire building?
Two rooms.
Two rooms, two separate entrances, two individual locks. Okay, so two separate living spaces, correct?
Well, they're not allowed to live there, but there are two
separate.
Yes, there are
dwelling spaces. Yeah,
it is
two
one-
separate, distinct spaces. They may share the building, but they share the interior space. Correct?
That is correct, but that's by an internal handshake agreement. If you look at their deed, they each own the entire property.
No, I get it. I get it. And I just think what the board needs to understand is there's two separate living spaces. They're separate. They may own, and it's this nuance of co-ownership versus condo versus unit versus anything. My second question, Brian, is the second owner, Ms. Condon, will they be hooking up a black water system to this tight tank? or is it just the sinks?
Just the sinks.
Just the sinks?
Yeah, the only, Mrs. Hill intends to remove the incinerating toilet and install a water toilet. The condon side of it doesn't intend to change anything. Right now, the sinks are going into the cesspool. The only difference will be they'll be going into the tight tank.
Okay. So there's no additional black water other than the ones coming out of the space used by Wendy Hill.
That is correct.
And that can be ongoing with the deed.
If you feel that it's necessary,
Okay.
I think that it's just, I think there was some confusion, and if I may, the term unit, if you own a condo, you own the unit that you live in, and then everything else is common area. Here, they own the whole thing together. I don't know how else to explain it.
No, I understand that. And what I'm trying to get at is, and I think this was some confusion because I'm calling it units, you're calling it co-ownership. I mean, you can look at it a bunch of different ways. And I guess, as an attorney, you look at it as a very specific way, where I can be a little bit more loose with how I phrase it. But I understand what you're saying. But what I want to drive home to the board is, especially when Kevin O'Brien asked about the neighbor, I think Kevin was asking about the other person in the structure. So there are two distinct quarters in the structure. They're separate. They have two different entrances, two different locks. They're personal spaces. So what we're concerned with, or what we were concerned with, there was additional black water from the second space, unit, co-dwelling, whatever you want to call it. So if you're saying, Brian, if you're going on record saying that only the sinks will be hooked up to the tight tank and there will be no additional black water into that tight tank beyond what is coming out of the hill section of the dwelling, house, bathhouse, whatever. Okay, that clarifies it for the board.
And if I can, I want to clarify something too. So yes, there are separate rooms, but it's by a handshake agreement. So I just want to make it very clear that this building is owned by two people as partners. Let me put it that way, if I may. And so to confirm what you're thinking, Jen, right now, forget about which side they're on. There is one toilet, the incinerating toilet, that will be replaced with a water toilet. So there'll be one toilet going into the tight tank. There's none going into the cesspool now. There are 4 sinks total. And so to make it very literal, when we got the permit and we started to think about how were we going to implement this, and we saw that only one quote unquote unit could be connected, we didn't want to violate the intent of the commission. And so we said, well, what do we do? Are we allowed to connect all the sinks or only half? When my legal brain kicked in, I said, well, there aren't any units. There's just one dwelling building. So anyway, I just want to be careful about putting conditions on the deed, because one of the things about co-tenants is that they're able to transfer their interest. In other words, Wendy can sell her half interest and Miss Condon can sell her half interest. So I'm very reluctant to agree to any kind of deed conditions, but I can confirm to you that one toilet exists now as in an incinerating form, and that will be in water form. And 4 sinks exist now, and 4 will exist after.
Well, I understand that, Brian, but my concern is in the future, adding additional black water to this system. The staff was adamantly against recommending that the board approve the installation of a tight tank in a barrier beach, in a dune system, in a velocity zone. And the concern was you were increasing the design flow from the gray water system to a black water system. Incinerating toilet was, other than an inconvenient smell, seems to work. So the additional any additional black water into this tank, the staff would recommend against.
Right, and as I said, there's no intention to have more than one toilet.
There's never any intention to do anything, Brian, but we permit a property, we permit a use, we don't permit a person, you know that.
Right, and I guess let me rephrase.
Thank you.
There's no objection to putting a condition on that says that's the only toilet, because I agree that the commission has jurisdiction over the black water going in.
Yep, no, thank you, Brian, for clarifying that for me.
Okay.
That's my only question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Kevin, do you have anything to add?
I have no comment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Steve, we're going to start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But I don't have any questions.
Peter?
No questions.
Pat?
I just have one request. I find it difficult to agree to striking language from an order of conditions when I don't have the complete order. I don't know what the impact of deleting a couple of clauses will have if I can't see the entire order. But I also think that the issue that Jen was just raising with Brian can be addressed by looking at the last sentence in Brian's 4-page letter. You could include that in the amended order, that the connection will involve a single connection from the raised structure to the tight tank. The single connection will carry all the gray water from the 4 sinks of the property, and the black water from the water toilet that will replace the incinerating toilet. I think that captures what you and Jen are talking about.
I agree.
But again, I'm not comfortable voting to strike sentences when I haven't seen the entire document. Could we just continue this for that purpose? It would take 2 minutes to address the next meeting. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think procedurally that would be okay. I mean, the applicant would have to request that.
Oh, if I understood the request to just table it till later tonight? Or continue it to another.
How are you going to get the order to her? She wants to read the whole order.
Well, we can
Thank
do
you.
that 2 ways. I apologize. I thought that, I guess I was thinking that the order was in your files, but so we
Yeah.
can do it 2 ways. I can email it to Pat right now, or we could ask for a continuance to a hearing.
I think the latter is the better way of doing it. It would be a very quick fix if we all get a copy of this order, so we know what you're asking
Sure.
the document to look like.
Okay.
Brian, we could put you on the December.
Hold on, we'll come back to that,
Okay.
please, and thank you. Maury?
I really don't have any comment, but I did read the Board of Health letter, and it does say it's a 2-bedroom, so I just want to make sure, because it's been stated as a 1-bedroom. It's a 2-bedroom?
It's actually a 0-bedroom, but I think that the Board of Health does that because they consider, under their regulations, a room that has privacy is deemed to be a bedroom. And that's because that's how they measure flow into the septic system, that they presume every bedroom must have 110 gallons capacity. So I would respectfully suggest that that's just their parlance on how they do it. It's not a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom. It's a bathhouse that's just, used. It's not a residence for anybody.
Just to clarify that, also, well, just to pile on that, I guess, the assessor's office considers it a 2-family dwelling. That's
Yeah.
labeled
I don't know how
2-family.
they get that, but yeah. I don't know.
That's how they have it labeled. We looked at that today.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just think that the Board of Health should be a signed document.
Okay.
Mark? Mark? Do you have anything?
No comment.
Kevin?
No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Courtney?
Let me understand, we're writing into the deed, and it's part of this order that only one toilet will be allowed in this building, is that correct?
You haven't decided that, Courtney. That would be something that you would discuss during deliberation.
Currently, there's one.
Correct.
So I mean, you know, we discussed in the hearing at some length, the whole issue about whether we had that a composting toilet was our preferred choice. But we are allowing a flush toilet. Well, now, if it's considered a two-bedroom, dual occupancy, family house, then we're gonna be down the road to a second toilet potential. And I have a lot of problems with it, with that. So I would not agree to this unless it's a restriction. It's in the deed that there's only one toilet allowed in this structure. That's my only question, only issue.
May I address that, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
So I think what Attorney Harris had was the great idea. If you read the last few sentences of my letter, if that were attached as a condition in the order of conditions, it would limit the commission's permission to one single toilet. And that's agreeable by the applicant. And that would be recorded against the property as a condition in the order of conditions.
So,
Can I say something to that, Mr. Wall? I'm recused, so I won't vote, but I'd like to say something to that. My question would be, since the town calls us two-family, would that require you at some point to, for, Board of Health purposes, to have a toilet in each, in quotes, unit? You know what I'm asking?
I do know what you're asking, and the way that I would answer the question, with all due respect to the assessor's office, is that I think the assessor's office has it wrong. And how they identify a property and classify it for tax purposes is apparently different than actual conditions. And you have your own jurisdiction. You could limit, and we're agreeable. Pat said it, and let me just reread the sentence. The connection will involve a single connection from the raised structure down to the tight tank. A single connection will carry all gray water from the 4 sinks at the property and the black water from the water toilet. You could put in the single water toilet that will replace the incinerating toilet. That would be agreeable. I don't know how the assessor got a two-family. It's not even a one-family.
Yeah, and I'm not looking to start anything. I just, the language just makes me curious, Okay, Betsy?
I don't want to drag this out, but my thought is, don't most of those places have a toilet? So you're saying that there's a unit here with no toilet. Is that correct, Brian?
No, there's no unit, Betsy. It's
Well, there's a room. There's a place that somebody can walk up steps and unlock it, lock and go into a room, and it's her room, and she can't go into the other room where there's a toilet.
No, legally she can. Legally, she can go anywhere in the property that they want. Wendy can go anywhere she wants. Susan can go anywhere she wants. It's all by private agreement. That's why I don't want to overuse the dormitory metaphor, but I might have an agreement with my roommate that this side's mine, that bed's mine, that bureau's mine, but let's share the fridge. Well, they could share the toilet if they want. They're basically roommates. They're partners in this property.
Right, but then you say they each can sell their share.
They can.
Well, the one with the toilet sells a share with the toilet. The one that doesn't have a toilet, that share isn't worth as much, right?
Well, that might be true, but let me rephrase. The toilet belongs to both of them. They each own the entire toilet. I'll give you the legal phrase. Co-tenants have what's called a 50% undivided interest. So they don't own any specific part. They both own all of it. And so they might have a private agreement on how the toilet's used, but the person in the side of the dwelling that doesn't have the toilet has every right to use the toilet the same as the person that might be occupying that room. The toilet belongs to both of them.
Okay, I'm not going to belabor the point, but it's just a little odd to me.
But they're agreeing that a condition could be placed that would be limited to one.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the next person to buy the side that doesn't have the toilet and then come back and want to hire Brian to convince us to allow them to have a toilet in the other half. But that's all right. That's not what we have tonight.
All right, so, Brian, we were talking about a continuance for the purposes of reviewing the prior agreement.
Right, and Maury wanted a signed version of the Board of Health decision. I had an unsigned version, but I can provide the signed version.
Okay. So would you be officially requesting a continuance, sir?
Yes, I'm requesting a continuance.
Thank you. Jen,
Will December 2nd work for you, Brian?
I'm sure it will, but let me just check.
I'm sure Mike's with us that evening.
Yep, that works fine. I appreciate the
At the request of the applicant, I make a motion for a continuance till December 2nd.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, to continue this until December 2. If there's no further comments, I'm going to call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird,
Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's eye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. This hearing is continued until 12/2. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Pat, you will be leaving us.
I shall. Thank you, everybody. See you in a few weeks.
Night, Pat. Have a nice
Good night.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Good night. I hope you feel better.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
All right, next up, our request for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. And that is 24 Willis Lane, and that has been continued. Therefore, we move on to hearings under an enforcement order. First one is 51 Pondview. Again, that has been continued. Therefore, next up is Cape House 11 LLC, 223 Meadow Neck Road, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted removal of vegetation within conservation jurisdiction. And
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think hold on one second. Justin or Thomas, can you please move Attorney Wall back into the attendee list? He has one more after this one tonight. And as well as Mr. Borselli, please. And then Jamie, I just promoted the attorney for Cape House LLC up to present, and I always pronounce your name wrong, Attorney Madija? Medea, I apologize. Is there anybody else on the project team we're promoting up tonight?
My associate Andrea Brady is listening in case I've been having trouble with my internet and I didn't want to leave you. So she's on the call in case she's needed. If you could promote her just in case.
Yeah, I will absolutely do so.
Thank you very much.
So we are promoting Attorney Brady up. Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So Jamie, this is an enforcement matter. The board is pretty familiar with this property. It's the end property on Meadow Neck Road before you enter the town of Mashpee, right before you get to the causeway. You've seen this project, one for a coastal bank restoration project, and most recently, an intensive hearing for a revetment that was installed where we had a consultant looking at it as well on behalf of the commission. We did get a few phone calls from residents and actually the agents in Mashpee that some work was going on at the property recently and they weren't sure if it was permitted. The staff went down there and it appeared that vegetated buffer in areas that weren't part of the previously two permitted projects was being altered and removed. I did send the commission the packet of information put together by Mark Kasperzik. It went to the residents' representatives, so they have the same information that you've looked at. And if you would indulge me, Mr. Chairman, I can share my screen to kind of give the board an overview. Actually, if you know what, I didn't bring up my GIS. Let's see if this will work real quick. GIS seems to want to take its time tonight. Actually, I'll just bring up this. So I am going to share screen. Can everybody see that?
Oh,
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so if you remember, this kind of brick patio area is, if you're looking at the property, south, possibly to the east side of the property, on the east side of the house, that I think was the extent of the coastal bank restoration project. It could have extended a little bit more, but I think this brick patio area was that extent. So as you can see, there was buffer zone that was removed, a number of trees that were taken down, and these were just the trees that the staff photographed that day. I can rotate that for you. Mr. Newton, how do I rotate? View, rotate.
You got it.
There you go.
Uh-oh. What did I do?
Just keep rotating.
Yep, just keep doing it until it looks good.
Took a long way rotating this, didn't I? Sorry about that, guys.
Did a 270-degree rotation.
And you know what? I'm still at the same thing. So everybody tilt your head. So, I mean, these are just the trees that they were able to photograph. So if we go down, there were, okay, so this brick patio right there, that's this structure right there, just to give the board some context. So the coastal bank restoration went this way towards the property. And I believe this was this most extent on this side. So there was a number, here's your coastal bank right here, salt marsh is below, so it's definitely within the buffer zone to a salt marsh and a coastal bank. Number of material is taken down. My staff loves pictures. This is one closer to the road, again on the bank, the marsh and the water you can see are down here. Some large trees were taken down. This is a view with the staff's back to the house and towards the road. Here's that osprey pole where you're going onto the causeway, going into the town of Mashpee. Again, here's that coastal bank that I had just showed you with more views of what had happened. And this was, so these were all taken on October 16th. At that point, the staff did ask the contractors to stop, leave the material, and don't do any additional work. What the fear was that the contractors would grub out the trees, and it would be extremely difficult, not impossible, but much more labor intensive and costly to locate the root systems of the trees if they were grubbed. Unfortunately, the staff went back a few days later, and the whole site was cleared, grubbed, and no tree is to be seen. So that was a little disheartening to the staff. And after the contractor on site was issued the cease and desist, we had contacted, not only did the staff talk to the person doing the work on site who was unknown to the staff, but we also contacted the restoration team that's doing the coastal bank restoration work and asked them to reach out to the applicant. So they were also aware, Crawford Ecological was also aware that there was a cease and desist on any more work. And then these are some pictures that we had before of, that vegetated area. Let me rotate these. Okay, hey, I did it correct this time. So again, just additional photographs. I'm giving the board a little bit more context. So the 26, and that's person doing the landscaping, Lopez Landscaping and Construction. And again, these were when they first got on site, the work that was being done. I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point, Mr. Chairman. So at this point, we're starting this enforcement process on this property. So we contacted the property owner. We had a little bit of difficulty contacting the property owner because the original enforcement letter for the hearing was sent to the address the town has on record with the assessor's department, which was an incorrect address. So I did reach out to the applicant's attorney after that we received that certified letter back. I felt it was important to do everything we could to contact the property owner to let them know that this hearing was going to be going forward. And then asked them to change the address with the town, sent them this information, and here we are. We'd like to begin this process. It's going to be a lengthy process, I think. Well, not lengthy, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult because those trees were grubbed. So it's going to take a little additional work on behalf of the property owner to do some work to locate those trees and restore the buffer zone that was altered. Okay. So what the staff would recommend is, obviously we have to begin by having a plan of the property submitted. They'll have to do some investigation on where these root systems are. They'll have to compare it to aerial photographs. They'll have to provide that kind of base plan to the staff, and then work with the staff to determine the appropriate mitigation. There were fairly large trees, as you saw, that were removed. And biomass absolutely has to be returned to this site. That is within a 100-foot buffer to the coastal bank, and even more importantly, to that adjacent salt marsh. And that's all I have for right now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, do you think all that's clear to the applicants?
I'm here to answer any questions. If the applicant's representatives have some additional questions, I'm just going to give them a chance to respond, and then, kind of walk them through what our normal process is.
Okay, Attorney Medea, would you like to address that?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I don't know if you've all seen the email, so I'll just say it out loud so it goes in your record also. Number one, site owner apologizes for unauthorized clearing. I call it the southern buffer zone on the site. and for the staff and the commission, time having been taken to address this issue. The site owner accepts responsibility and is not contesting the report in any way. The error resulted from the site owner's understanding that the whole site had already been staked for regulated resource areas, when in fact the southern area had not been staked. He takes full responsibility for his own not understanding staking and not staking. He had hired a landscape contractor, Mr. Lopez, who you photographed, or the staff photographed the truck. And it was Mr. Lopez who had hired a stump removal or grinder contractor. I don't know, frankly, what the right term is, but they remove the stumps and they do the grinding and to clear the vegetation. And the purpose, I should say, was not to provide a view. As you'll see, there's still trees that prevent a view that are in the area. So it was not to create a view, not that that's anything you've mentioned. But the problem came in that your person, Kevin Newton, your agent, spoke to Mr. Lopez and told him to stop work. He stopped work immediately and left the site. Unfortunately, it was Mr. Lopez who had hired the stump contractor and grinder guy who was scheduled to come the next day, and he went ahead and came, and that's how it happened without, the whole thing shouldn't have happened, but that's how the second day of activity happened. My client apologizes, takes full responsibility. We were asked by your agent, Ms. Lincoln, where the materials went. They went to Cape Cod Recycling, just up Route 28. The site owner was out of state at the time, and he's actually out of the country this evening and apologizes for not being here to be appropriately chastised in person. You'll have to do it to me. He did get notice of the stop work order after the work had already been done. The owner will absolutely restore your no-touch area. That's the local bylaw no-touch area with no dispute at all. We are asking for clarity on what you want done between the no disturb and the 100-foot buffer. If there is something that you would have allowed to be done that you like, actually, I don't know if what you want is pure restoration or if you want something better than what was there already. Because my understanding is some of the stuff that was there was both invasive and not, I don't know what the right word is, but biologically sound. The trees were not in excellent condition. So whatever you want, that is what will be done. But please make sure we get further conversation with you, Jennifer Lincoln, or whomever you wish, about what it is you would like to be done with as much clarity as possible. And if you need someone to assess that, as you said, with, I think you said aerial views, you'll want a site plan, I gather, of what was there, aerial views showing it, and to return biomass to the site. I don't know how much it matters to you about the caliper of the trees or the canopy of the trees. They certainly serve different functions. You tell us, we will do it. And thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to go down for comments, but Jen, that's, I mean, we're not going to design it for them, but is it fair to say that staff and the applicants restoration person could work together to work out a plan?
I think that can be done. I wouldn't want to close this for that. I think this hearing does need to stay open. So just to give this commission, because my thing is just starting to, where is that guy? That's that Osprey pole right there. So I'm just going to share my screen one more time, Mr. Chairman. Hang on. It's working. Here we go. So.
Are you sharing?
I'm about to.
Go.
Can we
Okay.
see that?
Yep.
So the area in question is kind of this general area. So you can see from this aerial, there were a number of trees that were cleared. You can kind of pick them out. And there are a lot of other trees in that area. So, I mean, I think it's important for the property owner's representative, restoration expert to do what they can to try to identify where those root systems of those trees are. From what I understand, and I don't know what the grinding company did, but when I had trees taken out in my own yard and I worked with a fairly well-respected tree company in Falmouth, I asked them, what's the difference between, stump grind, they call it stump grinding, or just removing the entire root system. And usually what they said is stump grinding them will take them down to about, I'd say a foot or like a foot underground. And that's just so you don't see it anymore and you can put your nice lawn there that my husband was able to do. We opted to rip the roots out, but I mean, when I was talking to Mark today, Mark Kausperzik, one of your staff members, he said there is a way where a restoration person could go in there to determine how many trees were taken out. Or, I mean, that would be a start. So I would say that one, we need a site plan of that southern kind of area. We need the resource areas marked, just site plan done, and then whomever the property owner chooses to work with, contact us and we can kind of walk through the process. Obviously, it was a very vegetated buffer, not just the no disturbance zone to the bank of the but I mean, we have to find out what that no disturbance zone to the salt marsh, it was fairly vegetated. We don't want the invasives put back, but like a hefty restoration plan and not just those no touch there areas. I mean, the no touch to the salt marsh, I mean, that's going to dominate most of that area. So.
Understood. May I repeat it back again? You want a hefty restoration plan. It was a well-vegetated buffer. There should be a site plan that shows the resource areas. And with that site plan, we should do our best to have competent people document where things were, especially the trees, which might be done through the root system. And we should then work with you all through the process.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to let everybody ask if they have anything they want to add. Just try to stay on point. Betsy?
Nope, nothing to add.
Courtney?
I would like to have a time schedule for all of this to be accomplished.
We can discuss that, Courtney.
Okay. Kevin? O'Brien?
No comments.
Mark?
No comments.
Maury?
I just want to make two quick comments. One is I also want to state that this was in the ACEC, if I'm not mistaken, Jen.
Yeah, I believe so, Maury.
Okay.
I'd be happy to check, but I don't think the land area is, but I will most definitely check for you. Do you have a specific species of concern? I know ECEC is generally a management plan. I'm not aware of one being in effect for this area.
Isn't the ACEC
is the area of environmental critical concern?
Yes,
And
area of critical environmental concern. And
Yeah.
it means that if something, you know this already, if there is a management plan in place, then all work has to comply with a management plan. I don't think there is one in this area.
We have regulations.
We have regulations
we've
on
done
our,
in an ACEC.
yeah.
Yep.
And you know it, yeah.
So I'd like to do one more thing, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to share my screen again. This is a different aerial view. This comes from the near map. It's a little bit clearer, I think, for the board. So this is an aerial photograph from April 14th of this year. Does everybody see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, this is the area in question. So these tools are available to determine how many trees actually were on site. Unfortunately, it won't tell us the caliber inches, but we can determine how many trees actually were on site. So this will be a really good tool as well. This is the near map program.
How is that spelled, Ms. Lincoln?
Near map, it's NEARMAP. It's used by assessing departments.
Okay, thank you.
But
And-
we can actually make these photographs available to your team if need be. If you can't access this program, I think I don't know where the town has purchased this program for our offices. So if this is something that's not available to you and it offers a little bit of clarity for aerial photographs, then I'd be happy to share these images with you.
Much appreciated. The site owner will be getting somebody competent, and if they don't have access, they'll be in touch.
Oh, that's fine.
Then my second comment was that if you go on the internet to look up that location, like with Zillow or whatever, they have some videos also that might help you to see what was there, because they do a drone shot throughout that area, and it just might be helpful to evaluate the what was removed.
Thank you very much.
All right. Peter?
No questions.
Steve?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, so my understanding is we're going to be looking for a continuance so that the applicants and staff can get together and agree on a path forward. Is that fair to say?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I think we should have possibly I would say continuance to like December 9th for a kind of a progress report.
Could I respectfully ask for after that, just to try to get you an actual professional engaged and doing the creation of a plan to discuss with you, with a holiday in between and people.
No, that's fine.
If it's all right with you.
We have the 16th available. If not, we'd have to push this off till after the first of the year, which, I mean, we're not going to be planting this site anytime soon.
No, so it's
So,
totally,
I mean,
we'll get it going immediately, but I'm concerned about professionals that are good being available while they're all at the same time trying to rush to do the things they can still get in. This is a plan to be done for the future.
so let's say we have the 16th available for, and I think what it is they might not be looking for that full plan at that point, but I think the board just wants to make sure the process is moving forward and hasn't stalled. And that there's no concerns on the staff end on the way the process is moving forward. So I'd say maybe do the December 16th. I'm not saying the plan has to be done by then, but at least maybe have somebody identified. And have contacted the staff and have begun that process, and then we'll bump it out another month or so. I just want to keep the board following this progress. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Very, thank you.
Okay.
So is that an official request for continuance until December 16th?
I didn't even know I had to ask for one. I assumed we already had the enforcement, and we need to get it taken care of, and we're to report in again on December 16th. Call it an official request.
Thank you. Maury?
I know we're continuing it, but should we have that stabilized? Because they literally cleared to the bitter edge of that coastal bank, and the ground is not at all stabilized, and with winter coming and it's not going to get planted, we should at least keep it from being eroded.
Okay, so
Sure.
Maybe have some
we
jute
have a
matting and some
contractor.
straw wattles along that bank and then some jute matting put down just to kind of stabilize that area.
That would, I mean, it would just be helpful because you get frozen ground and then thawing, it just washes right off. Even though it's relatively flat, it's still, you know, it's still a potential and it goes into the salt marsh, which is a critical area.
So do I have your permission then to call the, well, I'll get the client's permission, but then to call the restoration contractor that was working on the site in the seawall area and tell them if they can, assuming that they can do it, to put down straw wattles and jute matting along the coastal bank on the southerly edge?
Are you talking about Crawford Ecological? The people, the company that's doing the coastal bank restoration work,
Yes, the one that your agent.
not the revetment work, but the restoration work on the bank?
Yes.
Yes.
So have them reach out to staff for clarification.
Yeah,
Thank
no, that's fine.
I will, that's the first permission that I will get, is to do that. Because I understand and respect that making sure no further harm is done is a priority.
All right. If there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion.
A motion to continue to, what was it, December
16th for a
16th.
progress report.
For a
Second.
progress report?
Second, Gladfelder.
Carlo Hawk.
We have a motion and a second to continue this till 12:16 in the interest of getting an update and a progress report on how the restoration will proceed. So I'm going to take the vote. Betsy?
I just have a comment before I vote, and that is the ACEC has an 11-foot contour, and I think this is higher than 11 feet.
Mhm.
Okay.
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Bernie, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve? Steve, you're muted.
Pat and I.
Thank you. It is unanimous. This hearing is continued until 12:16.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Holiday.
You too.
All right, next up is a continued hearing under an enforcement order. Robert Burke, 326 Acapasket Road, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted construction, removal of vegetation, and installation of impervious surface within conservation jurisdiction. Ben?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Mr. Wall and Mr. Baroselli back up to panelists to kind of discuss this enforcement. So if the board remembers, this is at 326 Acapasket. I need to pull up that report. Give me 1 second. Apologize. I'm trying quickly, going quickly. I see this all as one big thing. No, that's not it. Oh, hang on. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to find the photos. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to share my screen real quick. So, remembers this report that we sent you. This is 2020. This is that near map program that shows 2019 and 2020, and you can see the differences in the driveway. This was housed during 2017. This is the new house. Yeah, I did it correctly this time. So obviously there's like some improvements done to the house and the wall. This was the little outbuilding, and I completely messed that one up. Sorry. I know it's getting late. And this is what it looks like now. I'm not even going to take the time to rotate. So obviously there's been a lot of landscape improvements and improvements to the structures. Unfortunately, none of them, we didn't have any permits for this work to be done. So we met with Mr. Bonazzoli and Mr. Burke a couple of weeks ago, Mike, right after or right before this. So we kind of knew what we needed to do. And you came up with a, Mike had to come up with like an existing conditions plan and kind of what the plan was before. He, you know, provided that to the staff. If I'm skipping a step, I'm sorry. And then we met back out there the other day to try to kind of figure out what needed to be done. They had done some calculations. They had done some kind of manipulation of what could be done, how much a mitigation was required. We met out on Friday with Mark and Mike and Mr. Burke to try to discuss it. Unfortunately, staff, we weren't in complete agreement. It was Friday afternoon. Mike wasn't able to get the plan to us until yesterday afternoon, and the staff was really busy, so we weren't able to review it till today. And we're still kind of, as of this afternoon, still had some kind of disagreement. So, you know, both sides have been frantically working until about 6:30 tonight to try to get a plan together for you. I think Mr. Bonazzoli and I are pretty much in agreement with what he's come up with. The plan is just not in a form that's suitable to share with the commission now. I think we should continue this matter so that Mike and I can finalize that plan and present it to you at your next hearing so we can finally just move this forward. The only question or concern the staff had, and Brian, this is where you come in, is what kind of assurances we have that when this plan is implemented, whatever plan is implemented, that the vegetation stay. Would you be willing to record this on the deed so that we have some sort of assurance that this vegetation is not removed in the future? Mike actually told me that you'd be able to address that, so you can blame Mike for me putting you on the spot on that.
So I too found out about that particular question at around 6:30 tonight. So I don't have an answer right now, but I will say this to Jen and to the commission, that where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, you have enforcement authority. You can make the plan that we're going to submit, the final version, incorporated into the enforcement order. Give me a little time. I'll provide you, I think, the assurance that you need.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Chairman, I'd say that we should probably just continue this to the 2nd, so that, like I said, Mr. Bonazzoli and I can kind of put some, you know, final touches on this plan.
I agree. Can you stop sharing, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I still was.
All right.
Sorry.
All right, so I don't know that there's really anything to discuss, but does anybody have anything they want to throw in there? Perfect.
I'll make a motion to continue to the 2nd of December.
Fellow Hawk second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this enforcement hearing until 12/2. If there's nothing else, I'm going to call for the vote. Betsy?
Gladfilter, aye.
Courtney? Courtney, you're muted. Or asleep.
Both.
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. This enforcement order is continued until 12/2. Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
very
Walsh.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays,
Don't forget-
Brian.
You, Brian.
Stay
Don't
safe.
forget, there's only 2 drumsticks. Don't forget. Have a good holiday.
Bye, Mike. I'm sure I'll be talking to you before Thanksgiving.
Yep. Good night.
Good night.
All right, we have a bunch of order conditions, so let's
Hammer them out.
move right through. First up,
Amy, could
next.
Betsy, I'll check if I'm on the quorum for any of the votes.
You're, don't sneak off yet.
Peter, are you trying to run off?
I wasn't at the last meeting, and typically the votes come next meeting.
Unfortunately, Peter, you're not on any of them.
Good night, Peter. You have a wonderful holiday.
I'm glad.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Night. Happy holidays, Peter.
All right,
Okay.
all right. Vote order conditions. First up, Jay Brooks and Karen M. King Watt, J Brooks Watt Revocable Trust, 174 Succonesset Road, Falmouth, Mass.
This was, okay, wait, 174.
Steve, you're not on any of the quorums either. If you want to sneak out.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Happy
Steve.
Thanksgiving.
Sorry I was late, boss.
Not a problem.
Ow.
Thank you for your diligence anyway.
I just booted him out. Hang on. Wait a minute. Shoot. Hang on. One second, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I just need to figure something out. This is the one where they were doing a stone patio. They had the stairs on the pool equipment. It was almost a McGrath plan. They had little stepping stones everywhere. I think this only staff's comment was restoration plantings needed to be 10 feet from the structure. But I think it was pretty much presented. And then I think somebody, and I'm pretty sure it was Maury, had a question about where the new soil was coming in from because they didn't want it coming from the dump.
Right.
Wasn't there also a removal of an oak?
Yes. And then we said leave oak. You're correct.
And there was no machines in the restoration area, and if they need a vista corridor, they have to come back in front of us.
Correct.
Okay, does anybody have anything extra they'd like to add into that? All right,
I'd like to make a motion to accept as discussed.
Carlo Hawk, second.
all right. We have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Excellent, thank you. It's unanimous. We have an order of conditions. Next up, Jonathan and Karen M. Moreau Kaufman, trustees, Kaufman Family Revocable Trust, 193 Shorewood Drive, East Falmouth, Mass.
This is the one where They're moving it much closer to the road than the present structure is. This was a Cape and Islands plan. I believe it was Mark that asked them to remove the concrete blocks and floats from the salt marsh. It could be wrong though.
Yeah, if I may, sort of reconsidered a little bit about that. There was some trash down Marsh at all with the steps that are currently used. Those steps were totally overgrown. I think it might be worse, more damage to the bank to pull them out than just to leave them there.
Okay. Okay. And that's the concrete block steps, but the floats should be removed from the marsh.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Condition caliper of Tupelo being replaced or replanted. How big Tupelo do you want?
That was 14 caliper removal.
And then I think we're adding an additional 200 square feet of shrubs in that northwest corner to kind of make up for that. So we're going to put in one Tupelo tree and then an additional 200 square foot of shrubs in that corner, correct?
Correct.
What's the caliper inch on the Tupelo?
Anybody have any suggestions more?
They're usually like 2.5 inch.
Okay. Northwest corner. Okay, thank you. Anything else, guys?
Anybody have anything else they'd like to see in there? Maury?
Nope.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, and then they needed to submit a new site plan because of the water heater versus oil tank. We know that there was some concern by the neighbor that the fire department might not catch it and will go in there and just start demoing and it's an oil tank, so.
That shouldn't preclude the order.
No,
condition.
no, but I think they've already submitted a new plan. I just have to double check.
Okay.
And maybe we can put in our findings if that's
Accept the
submitted.
orders discussed.
Hawk second.
Findings on what, Maury?
When we put it in the findings that that oil tank is removed legally or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
We have a motion, a second to accept as discussed. Anybody have anything else? All right. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Greeny, aye.
Maury? Maury, you're muted.
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Thank you. Thank you. We have issued an order of conditions for 193 Shorewood. Next up, Nye Neck Association, Inc., 0 Westwood Road, map 0402B, parcel 041046, North Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was the reconstruction of the Nye Neck Association dock. Pretty straightforward.
All right. Anybody have anything special they'd want on there?
We just had time of year, if there was one, and barge to float at all times.
Yeah, barge, float, time of year restrictions from DMF. Can't remember if there isn't any. That's
I
fine.
don't think there were any, but
Yeah,
I don't think there were, but. just-
yeah, okay.
I move to accept as discussed, Harlow Hawks.
second, Gladfelter.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Greeny, aye.
Maury.
Harlow Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have an order of conditions. Thank you. Next up, not too far. Joseph R. and Jean M. McCabe, 58 Eel River Road, East Falmouth, Mass.
This is a raise and reconstruct. Hang on. This is plan. I have a note, show vegetation at 75-foot buffer. And quite honestly, I have no idea what I meant by that, so. It's,
You know what it means here?
figure it out.
I have a note here about there's a caliper inch discrepancy.
Oh yeah, between the 16-inch oak and the 14-inch oak, they're taking out. So they were proposed masonry walkway to connect to new deck. They were reconstructing, they were taking a portion of the masonry walkway out. The existing patio would be reconstructed. I think it's because they just didn't have a vegetation line along that 75-foot no touch. They just have the limit of work. So I think the board, I think the wanted to see some sort of vegetation line. You know, where they do like the little squigglies of vegetation.
So we know that there really is vegetation there in the future if they come
Yeah,
back.
and then the discrepancy. I think Teresa has it as 16. Mike has it as 16. So I don't know what the discrepancy actually was, Mr. Chairman. Anybody remember? We have that 14-inch oak being taken out of the house and that 16-inch oak right where the masonry walkway connects to the new masonry walkway.
What were they proposing to put in?
One Amelanchier, a 7-gallon Amelanchier. I'm sorry, 2 of them, and 1 inch to 2-inch oak, white oak. They're taking out they're over 30 inches. And Mike, I did have the question because where they're saying they're gonna put the oak, there's already all oaks over there. So I'm just concerned that, you know, we're shoving, they kind of crammed everything over in that corner. And they're taking out that 16-inch oak on the pathway, which I don't know why, but
So do you want them to leave the 16-inch oak on the pathway?
I don't know why they're taking it down. I don't know if that was, we were given a reason.
Is that something we can put in the findings?
I can't remember why. I don't think it was a thing. Is it a view issue?
No, because there's an 8-inch right behind it, and you know,
Yeah.
you look at all the. I don't know. It's just we really didn't get much for trees. We got low bush blueberry. Over half of the plantings are low bush blueberry.
Correct.
Yeah, which, you know, it is what it is. But as far as the caliper inch per caliper inch, we keep getting shorted. We're getting literally 2.5 inches of caliper inch for 30 inches.
Where do you propose to put it, Maury?
Well, sometimes they don't have room for it, so they can't take them down. I mean, you know, sometimes they don't have
So
enough.
then just say they can't take the 16-inch oak down. There's no justification for taking the 16-inch oak down.
There you go. That helps.
Is that better?
Makes me more happier.
More happier? Okay. Uh-oh.
All right, so we good on that?
Make a motion to accept as discussed.
Hello, Hawk, second.
Okay, does anybody have anything they want to add? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Hello, Hawk's eye.
It is unanimous. We have an order of conditions. Thank you. Next up, Ralph and Michelle Cataldo, 0 Bridge Street, Lot 41, Falmouth, Mass. This is a new house on a vacant lot.
Yep, we pushed him to give the 10-foot limit of work. He did. I think the only thing is they're going to come back possibly under an amendment or an RDA for the path. I know there is talk about putting a path in, but I don't believe they showed it on the plan. But I think they did what we asked them to do.
Well, I have the same note that they'd be coming back for
Yeah.
vista pruning.
Vista
location
pruning, yeah.
and possibly enhance the buffer. So, I mean, that's future, right? So,
Correct.
but we're not approving a path, prune, or a buffer. Okay.
Nope.
Anybody have anything they want to add? I think they covered it pretty well, so.
And they kept that, they held that 10-foot limit of work line. Not my preferred choice of sites, but that's a busy corner.
Make a motion to accept as discussed.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to issue the conditions. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawk's aye.
It is unanimous. We have an order of conditions. Thank you. Next up, Brian Ranger, 32 Parker Road, East Falmouth, Mass.
Hang on 1 second, Mr.
This was an adjustment to,
They just shifted the house.
Yeah.
Way across the lot. They put it on the other side of the lot. So I think the only comment that was made was by Pat when she noticed that Jack wasn't holding a 10-foot limit of work from his structure. So he's got plenty of room to put it in. He just didn't. So
I don't think
he's got plenty of room where he's not encroaching on anything. So
did he adjust that?
you'll have to give me a revised plan. He has not yet.
Okay, but we can put that in the findings that we insist it be a 10-foot buffer.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I think we asked for a revised plan to be put in.
I'll get one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine, but I thought you would have had it by now.
I'm not sure we did. I don't know.
I think we said we could condition it. And he agreed because it came up at the very end of the hearing.
With that, I'll make a motion to accept as discussed.
Maury, have anything?
I think I'm on the quorum.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you are.
Seconded.
It was an amendment, Maury.
All right, I don't remember.
Okay, so we have a motion to issue an order of conditions. Do we have a second?
Yes. Bird, second.
Thank you. Okay, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawk's aye.
It is unanimous. We have an order of conditions. Thank you. Next up, last up, Christine M. and John H. Boyle, 15 J Road, Falmouth, Mass.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, that was a typo. That was an extension and Amy had asked me something and we got kind of cross. So that's a mistake. That was an extension that was already granted, not an order of conditions. You do
Awesome.
vote the Houlihan project at 352 Sippawisset though.
Oh, yes. So that was from earlier tonight. That was for, well, I'll let you tell, Jen.
Yeah, that was for the plan to remove the patio and reestablish the mitigation to comply with the 1996 order for the house. The restoration has already taken place. And so the only real big question I think lingering out there for this order is, does the board want to see monitoring on this mitigation? The restoration, the enforcement matter does have monitoring. Do you want to see monitoring in addition on the restoration since it was there and then removed, or?
Yes.
Yes, and they're already there.
What?
Already there monitoring one, they might as well monitor them both.
Okay, fine. It's
That's a
just an
given.
important thing that I need to lock down because of the sale of the property. The new owners need, like,
Oh, that's important.
their requirements are going forward, so. So monitoring, okay, perfect.
I'll move to accept as discussed.
I'll second Gladfelter.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury.
Arlo Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We have an order of conditions. Thank you. One more motion.
Move to adjourn.
Arlo Hawks, second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury.
Arlo Hawks, aye.
It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You guys have a nice Thanksgiving.
Thanks, guys.
Stay
Great
safe.
Thanksgiving.